Imagine your biggest worry is a double-digit bank account and a blind pug. Now, imagine staring into the burning amber eyes of a lethal predator bleeding out in a rainy Seattle alley. Hallie Bennett thought she was saving a stray dog. She was actually kidnapping the wounded Alpha King. One mistake, one innocent phrase, "good boy," ignites a corporate shifter war that threatens to burn her city down. She wanted a quiet life. She got a naked monarch in her kitchen who claims her very soul. If you love accidental mates, dangerous alphas, and slow burn tension, hit that like button and subscribe to its Zero Werewolf Romance collection right now. Drop a comment below and tell me where you are listening from tonight. Let the hunt begin. Chapter 1. The Wet Dog. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall, it aggressively tried to drown you. It was a cold, sheet metal gray downpour that turned the alley behind Pause and Reflect into a slushy river of dumpster juice and mud. Hallie Bennett shoved her shoulder against the back door of her studio, locking the deadbolt with a grunt. It had been a long day. 3 golden retrievers who thought jumping was a love language, a husky that screamed like a banshee every time a leaf moved, and a Great Dane that had eaten a couch cushion. She just wanted to go home, put on sweatpants, and ignore the fact that her bank account balance was currently double digits. She made it 3 steps toward her dented 2015 Subaru Forester before she heard it. It wasn't a bark. It was a sound so low it vibrated in the soles of her boots, a wet, gurgling huff of air. Hallie froze, her hand tightening around her keys. She wasn't the type to investigate scary noises in dark alleys. She was the type to get in the car and lock the doors. But then the sound came again, followed by a whimper that was distinctly canine. "Damn it," she hissed, the condensation from her breath clouding the air. She turned on her heel, pulling a small flashlight from her pocket. She swept the beam across the overflowing dumpster, the stacks of wet cardboard, and finally, the dark recess between the brick wall and a rusted generator. The light caught the reflection of eyes. Amber. Burning. "Hey there," Hallie said, her voice dropping automatically into her trainer tone, calm, assertive, low. "You look like you're having a rough night." The animal tried to rise, but its front legs buckled. It collapsed with a splash, its breathing ragged. Hallie stepped closer, disregarding the mud splattering her cargo pants. As the light fully illuminated the creature, her breath hitched. It was massive. Not Great Dane tall, but thick. A black, wolf-like beast with fur matted by rain and blood. A lot of blood. A distinct slash ran across its flank, deep and angry. "Okay, big guy," she murmured, crouching down a few feet away. She held out a hand, palm up, fingers curled. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just taking a look." The beast snarled. It wasn't the warning snap of a frightened stray. It was a guttural, vibrating threat that promised violence. If Hallie had been a normal person, she would have run. But Hallie Bennett had been bitten by chihuahuas, headbutted by boxers, and dragged through gravel by mastiffs. She knew the difference between aggression and pain. Yeah, you're tough," she said dryly, inching closer. "But you're also bleeding out next to a dumpster that smells like 3-day-old sushi. So you can either eat me or let me help you." The animal stared at her. The intelligence in those amber eyes was unsettling. It watched her with a focus that felt almost judgmental. Hallie reached into her pocket and pulled out a freeze-dried liver treat. "Bribery," she announced, "is how the world works." She tossed it. The treat landed near the beast's nose. He didn't even sniff it. He just kept staring, his chest heaving with the effort to stay conscious. "Suit yourself. No snacks." Hallie moved fast. She knew if she hesitated, he'd snap. She closed the distance, her hands hovering over his neck to check for a collar. Nothing, just thick muscle and heat radiating off him like a furnace. "No collar. You're a stray? Or a coyote hybrid?" She frowned, touching the fur near the wound. The beast flinched, a low growl rumbling in his throat, but he didn't bite. He was too weak. "I can't call animal control," she muttered to herself, scanning the severity of the gash. "They'll take one look at you, call you a wolf, and put you down before the paperwork is signed." She sighed, the rain plastering her messy bun to her skull. "Guess I'm an idiot today." She backed up the Subaru, popping the trunk. She laid down the heavy-duty tarp she used for muddy hikes. Then she went back to the beast. Okay, look, this is going to suck for both of us. I'm going to pick you up. You're going to try not to rip my throat out. Deal? The beast's eyes were half closed now. He looked heavy, maybe 70 or 80 pounds. Big, but manageable. Hallie squatted, wrapped her arms around his torso, and lifted. She nearly threw out her back. Holy! She gasped, her knees buckling. He was dense, impossibly dense. It was like lifting a statue made of lead wrapped in fur. He couldn't weigh more than 80 pounds by the look of him, but he felt like he was pushing 200. What do you eat? She groaned, gritting her teeth as she hauled him up. Bricks? The beast's head lolled against her shoulder. For a second, his wet nose brushed her neck. He smelled like ozone, copper, and pine, a forest fire in the rain. She staggered to the car, her muscles screaming. With a final, ungraceful heave, she shoved him into the trunk space and slammed the hatch before gravity could win. She leaned against the car, panting, wiping rain from her eyes. Okay, vet kit at home. Tater Tot is going to be pissed. Inside the car, the beast, Roman, faded in and out of consciousness. The humiliation burned hotter than the wound in his side. He was the king of the sovereign pack. He was a predator who commanded armies. And now, he was being kidnapped by a woman who smelled like vanilla and wet dog, shoved into the back of a Subaru that needed new shocks. I will kill her, he thought, the darkness claiming him. As soon as I can stand, I will end her. But as the car rumbled to life, the vibration didn't hurt. It felt safe. Chapter 2: The Stitch-Up. The kitchen light was unforgiving. It hummed with a fluorescent buzz that highlighted every stain on the linoleum and every jagged edge of the wound on the beast's ribs. Hallie had managed to drag the animal onto her kitchen table, ruining the tablecloth she'd bought at a thrift store, but that was the least of her worries. Stay with me, buddy, she murmured, snapping on a pair of blue nitrile gloves. She had a well-stocked medical kit, a necessity when you worked with reactive dogs. She had saline, iodine, surgical staples, and a curved needle with suture thread. She wasn't a vet, but she'd stitched up enough playful mishaps to know the basics. The beast was sprawled on his side, his breathing shallow. Now that he was out of the rain, he was even more terrifying. His paws were the size of saucers, the pads rough and calloused. His claws were black scythes. Okay, let's get this cleaned up, she whispered. She flushed the wound with saline. The beast twitched, a low whine escaping his throat. I know. It stings. You're a brave boy. Such a brave boy. In the corner of the kitchen, Tater Tot, her blind French bulldog, was spinning in circles, barking at the air. Tot, knock it off! Hallie commanded without looking up. We have a guest. Be polite. Tater Tot sneezed and rammed his head into the refrigerator. Hallie turned her attention back to the patient. She soaked a gauze pad in iodine. This is the bad part, sorry. She pressed the pad to the gash. The beast's eyes snapped open. They weren't hazy anymore. They were laser-focused, dilated, and fixed right on her face. A growl ripped through the room, loud enough to rattle the silverware in the drawer. He tried to snap at her hand, his teeth clicking inches from her wrist. Hey! Hallie didn't pull back. She didn't flinch. She used her forearm to firmly press his neck down to the table, a dominance hold, but gentle. Knock it off. I'm helping you. If you bite me, I swear to God I will shave you bald and paint you pink. The threat hung in the air. Roman froze. His wolf brain was screaming at him to tear this human apart, to defend his vulnerable belly. But his human mind was caught on the sound of her voice. It wasn't fearful. It was steady, an anchor. And her hands. Where her skin touched his fur, even through the gloves, there was a strange, dulling sensation to the pain. It was like ice on a burn. The agony in his ribs receded, replaced by a warm, thrumming energy that moved from her touch into his bloodstream. Mate, his wolf whispered. Impossible, Roman thought. She's human, she's frail, she drives a Subaru. But the biological imperative didn't care about his elitism. He stopped struggling. He laid his head back down on the table, watching her. Good boy, she cooed, her voice softening instantly. She stroked the fur between his ears. See, we can be civilized. She began to stitch. It was gruesome work. The skin was tough, resisting the needle, but the beast didn't move again. He just watched her, his amber eyes tracking every movement of her face. He watched her bite her lip in concentration. He watched a loose strand of hair fall into her eyes and the way she blew it away with a puff of air. Almost done, she murmured. You're lucky, you know. This missed your lung by an inch. Whatever got you had big claws. Bear? Cougar? She tied off the final knot and snipped the thread. Or maybe just a really big raccoon. She stepped back, peeling off the bloody gloves. There. You'll live to chase mailmen another day. She grabbed a warm, wet washcloth and began to wipe the mud and dried blood from his muzzle. It was an intimate gesture, something a mother would do for a child, or a lover for a partner. Roman closed his eyes. The pull was overwhelming. His body, starved of energy by the veil and the blood loss, began to leach strength from her proximity. He felt his cells knitting together at an accelerated rate. He needed to be closer. He nudged his head against her stomach. "Aww," Hallie melted. The tough girl facade cracked. She buried her hands in the thick ruff of his neck, scratching the sweet spot behind his ears. "You're actually a big softy, aren't you? Yes, you are. You're a big, mushy baby." She kissed the top of his head. Roman's entire body went rigid. The sensation was electric. It shocked his system so hard his heart skipped a beat. "Okay," Hallie yawned, oblivious to the fact that she had just soul-bonded with a lethal monarch. "You can't stay on the table, and you're too heavy to move to the couch." She grabbed a pile of blankets from the closet and made a nest on the kitchen floor, right next to the radiator. "In you go." She helped him slide off the table. He collapsed onto the blankets, exhausted but wired. "Sleep tight, Cujo," she whispered, turning off the harsh overhead light. She left the room. Roman listened to her footsteps fade, the creak of her bed springs, and the soft rhythm of her breathing as she fell asleep. Only then did he allow himself to pass out, his nose pressed into the linoleum where her footprint still lingered. Chapter 3. The Morning Horror. Sunlight hit Hallie's face like a physical slap. She groaned, rolling over and burying her face in the pillow. Her back ached from lifting the coyote the night before, and her apartment smelled faintly of antiseptic and wet fur. Wait, the coyote. Hallie sat up, the memory of the previous night rushing back. She checked the time on her phone. 8:15 a.m. Crap, she muttered. She needed to check the stitches, make sure he hadn't chewed them out, and figure out what to do with a 100-pound predator before her 10 a.m. appointment. She padded out of the bedroom in her oversized t-shirt that said, "Ask me about my dog," and a pair of mismatched wool socks. "Tater tot?" she called out. "If you peed on the rug, you're going into the soup." No answer. She walked down the hallway to the kitchen. "Hey, big guy, how are we She stopped dead in the doorway. The blanket nest on the floor was empty. The back door was still locked. Standing in front of her open refrigerator, bathed in the morning light, was a man. And not just a man, a lot of man. He was massive, at least 6'4", with broad shoulders that tapered down to a lean, powerful waist. He was completely, starkly naked. His skin was tanned and covered in faint white scars, and his dark hair was a mess. He was currently drinking 2% milk straight from the carton, his head tilted back, his throat working as he downed the entire thing. Hallie's brain short-circuited. For 3 seconds, she just stared at the glute muscles flexing as he shifted his weight. Then, reality crashed in. "Oh my God," she screamed. The carton crumpled in his hand. Hallie scrambled backward, her socks slipping on the hardwood floor. She grabbed the first thing her hand touched on the counter. A heavy cast-iron skillet she'd left drying on the rack. "Get out!" she shrieked, wielding the pan like a tennis racket. "I'm calling the police! I have a gun! I have a very aggressive pug!" The man turned slowly. He didn't look scared. He looked annoyed. He wiped a drop of milk from his lip with the back of his hand. His face was all sharp angles and dark stubble, handsome in a way that looked dangerous, like a cliff edge you wanted to jump off. But it was the eyes that stopped her heart. Amber, burning, judgmental. "Put the pan down," he said. His voice was a deep rasp, like gravel grinding together. "I will knock you unconscious," Hallie threatened, though her voice wobbled. She backed up until she hit the wall near the phone. "How did you get in here? Where's the dog?" The man took a step toward her. He moved with a terrifying grace, silent, fluid, predatory. "Stay back!" She reached for the landline receiver. In a blur of motion, he was there. One second he was by the fridge, the next, he was standing inches from her, his hand wrapped around her wrist. He didn't squeeze, he just held her, an immovable object. "I said," he rumbled, looking down at her, "put the pan down." Hallie dropped the skillet. It clattered loudly to the floor, missing her toes by an inch. She was shaking. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating off him. He smelled like ozone, pine, and her lavender soap? "Please don't kill me," she whispered, looking up at him. "Take the TV. It's a smart TV. It has Netflix." The man sighed, a sound of profound exhaustion. He released her wrist and stepped back, giving her space. He didn't seem concerned with his nudity, which made Hallie stare aggressively at his face to avoid looking elsewhere. "I don't want your television, Hallie," he said. "How do you know my name?" "It's on the mail on your counter, and the lease agreement on the fridge." He gestured vaguely. He turned slightly, reaching for a kitchen towel to wrap around his waist. As he moved, Hallie saw it. On his left side, just below the ribs, a fresh, angry wound, neatly closed with black surgical thread. The room spun. Hallie looked at the wound, then at the empty blanket nest, then at his amber eyes. "The stitches," she breathed. "I put those in." The man, Roman, tied the towel securely and leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms over his chest. He looked at her with a mix of arrogance and begrudging respect. "You have steady hands," he said dryly. "But you missed a spot near the bottom. It pulls when I breathe." Hallie's knees gave out. She slid down the wall until she hit the floor. "You're the dog," she squeaked. "I put a dog in my car, and now you're a naked guy." "Wolf," he corrected, looking offended. "And I would appreciate some pants." "I kissed your head," she whispered, horror dawning on her face. "I rubbed your belly." Roman's jaw tightened. A flush of color touched his cheekbones, but he held her gaze. "We will never speak of that." "I called you a brave boy!" Hallie covered her face with her hands, hysteria bubbling up in her chest. "I tried to give you a liver treat." "I prefer steak," he said. "Rare." Hallie peeked through her fingers. "This isn't real. I'm dreaming. I ate some bad cheese and now I'm hallucinating a stripper in my kitchen." Roman pushed off the counter and loomed over her. The shadow he cast was enormous. "I am not a stripper. I am—" He cut himself off. He couldn't tell her he was a king. Not yet. "I am in trouble. And because you decided to play veterinarian, now you are too." "Me?" Hallie scrambled to her feet, finding her anger again. "I saved your life! You were bleeding out next to a dumpster!" "And I thank you for that," he said, though he didn't sound thankful. He sounded like he was tolerating a subordinate. "But the people who did this are still out there. And now—" He leaned in, inhaling deeply near her hair. "You smell like me." Hallie stared at him. Is that a pickup line? Because it's terrible." Roman blinked. For the first time, he looked confused. "It is a statement of fact. You are marked." "I am not marked. I am Hallie." She pointed a trembling finger at the door. "Get out. Get out right now, before I call the cops and tell them a naked man is harassing me." Roman caught her finger. His skin was burning hot against hers. The air in the kitchen suddenly felt heavy, charged with static. "You can't call the police," he said softly. "And I can't leave. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because," he gritted out, looking like the words physically hurt him, "if I leave your radius right now, the wound will tear open again. I need—" He trailed off, looking at her mouth. "You need what?" Hallie whispered, entranced despite herself. "I need you to stop talking," he said, "and find me some sweatpants." Chapter 4. The Pin. Hallie scrambled out of the kitchen as if the linoleum were on fire, her wool socks slipping on the hardwood hallway. She needed distance, she needed oxygen, she needed a pair of pants that would fit a man who looked like he was built in a laboratory dedicated to creating super soldiers. Pants, pants, think Hallie. She muttered, tearing open the closet in the guest room. It was currently serving as a graveyard for hobbies she'd abandoned: watercolor painting, knitting, and a brief, regrettable attempt at pottery. She shoved aside a box of yarn and found it, the breakup box. It belonged to Greg, her ex-boyfriend of 3 years who was 6 feet 2 inches and enjoyed casual CrossFit. When he left, he'd forgotten his favorite gray sweatpants. Hallie had kept them, intending to burn them in a witchy ritual she saw on TikTok, but she'd never gotten around to buying the sage. "Sorry, Greg," she whispered, snatching the gray fabric. "Your loss is, well, it's definitely not my loss right now." She marched back to the kitchen, holding the sweatpants out like a peace offering. Or a shield. Roman hadn't moved. He was still leaning against her counter, arms crossed over that expansive chest, looking entirely too comfortable for a man wearing a tea towel and a scowl. "Here," she said, tossing the bundle at him. He caught it with one hand. "Thank you." He didn't turn around. He didn't ask for privacy. He simply untucked the towel. Hallie spun around so fast she nearly gave herself whiplash, staring aggressively at her spice rack. "You could warn a girl. This is a civilized household. We have boundaries." "I have nothing you haven't seen," Roman's voice rasped from behind her. "You cleaned blood off my hip bone last night. I assume we are past the point of modesty." "That was medical," Hallie squeaked. "That was a triage situation. I wasn't looking at the architecture." She heard the rustle of fabric, then the soft snap of an elastic waistband. "You can turn around now," he said. Hallie turned slowly. The sweatpants fit, but barely. They hung low on his hips, and the hem stopped a good 2 inches above his ankles, but it was an improvement over the towel. He looked less like a Greek god interrupting breakfast and more like, well, a Greek god who had just come from the gym. "Okay," Hallie exhaled, leaning against the doorframe for support. "So, you're a wolf. A werewolf?" "Shifter," he corrected, rolling his shoulder to test the stitches. "Werewolf implies I only turn when the moon is full, and I have no control. I have control." "Right, you have control," Hallie laughed, a high, brittle sound. "That's why you were bleeding out behind a dumpster? That's why I had to carry you like a sack of potting soil into my trunk?" Roman's eyes narrowed. The amber iris seemed to swirl, catching the kitchen light. "I was ambushed, and the size issue is a survival mechanism. It's not for public discussion." "I thought you were a coyote mix." Hallie threw her hands up. "I was gonna name you Bandit. I was literally planning to buy you a collar with a little bow tie." Roman flinched. The idea seemed to physically pain him. "I do not wear bow ties." "I scratched your ears." The mortification was hitting her in waves now. Every coo, every baby talk sentence she'd uttered the night before was playing on a loop in her brain. "I let you sleep on my rug. I told you that you were a—" She covered her mouth, her eyes widening. Roman stepped closer. The air in the kitchen changed. It grew heavy, charged with static, like the moment before a lightning strike. "You told me what, Hallie?" She swallowed. She should stop. She really should stop, but her brain had no brakes. "I called you a good boy. I patted your head and said, 'Who's a good boy?'" The silence that followed was absolute. Roman didn't blink. He didn't breathe. He just existed, occupying the space with a predator's intensity. "You treated a king like a house pet," he said, his voice dropping an octave. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. "I didn't know you were a king. I thought you were a dog, a very large, very hurt dog." Hallie backed up until her spine hit the cool metal of the refrigerator. "And technically you were being a good boy. You didn't bite me when I was stitching you up. Most dogs would have nipped. Roman moved. It wasn't a walk. It was a blur. 1 second, he was 3 feet away. The next, his hands were planted on a refrigerator door on either side of her head, caging her in. He smelled like rain, antiseptic, and pure, unadulterated danger. Hallie gasped, looking up, way up. In human form, he was towering. His eyes were flashing gold, the pupils blown wide. "Do not," he growled, leaning down until his nose brushed the shell of her ear. "Mistake my patience for tameness." His breath was hot against her neck. Hallie's heart hammered, a frantic rhythm against her ribs. This wasn't fear, not exactly. It was adrenaline. It was the primal recognition that she was standing next to something at the very top of the food chain. "I am not a pet," he whispered, the words vibrating against her skin. "I am not safe, and I am certainly not good." He pulled back just enough to look her in the eye. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back up. The hunger in his expression had nothing to do with food. "I am anything but good, Hallie." The tension was thick enough to choke on. Hallie forgot how to breathe. She forgot her name. She forgot that she had a job to go to. Then a small, snorting sound came from the floor. Chomp. Roman stiffened. He looked down. Tater Tot, having finally navigated away from the fridge, had located the intruder. The blind pug had latched onto the hem of Greg's gray sweatpants and was tugging ferociously,
growling like a chainsaw trying to start.
"Let go," Roman said to the dog, his terrifying aura popping like a soap bubble. Tater Tot snarled and shook his head, ripping a small hole in the fabric. "He doesn't speak English," Hallie whispered, the spell breaking. She ducked under Roman's arm and scooped up the potato-shaped dog. "And he hates men in sweatpants. It's a trauma response." Roman straightened up, looking at the fraying hem of his borrowed pants. He looked at Hallie, clutching the pug like a lifeline. He dragged a hand down his face, and for a second, he just looked like a tired guy in a messy kitchen. "I need food," he said flatly. "Real food, before I eat the dog." Chapter 5. House Arrest. "You can't just leave," Hallie argued, blocking the front door with her body. It was a brave, if futile, gesture. Roman outweighed her by 100 pounds and had reflexes faster than a striking cobra. "I have to," Roman said, buttoning the flannel shirt she'd found for him. It was tight across the shoulders, the fabric straining with every movement. "The people who did this to me, the Severed. They track energy signatures. If I stay here, they will find me. And when they find me, they will burn this building to the ground with you inside it." "So go to the police," Hallie insisted. "Or the FBI. You can't just walk out there with a stitched-up side and no shoes." "I don't need shoes," Roman muttered, checking the hallway through the peephole. "And human authorities cannot handle this. This is pack business." He put his hand on the doorknob. "Roman, wait!" Hallie reached out, grabbing his forearm. A spark. Literal static electricity snapped between them. Roman froze, looking at her hand on his arm. His expression softened for a microsecond before he hardened it again. "Thank you for the stitches, Hallie. Send me a bill." He opened the door and stepped out onto the landing. He made it exactly 3 steps. The moment he crossed the threshold of the welcome mat, a sound ripped out of him. A guttural, strangled cry of pure agony. Roman doubled over, clutching his side. His knees hit the floorboards of the hallway with a heavy thud. "Roman!" Hallie rushed forward. It was happening fast. The gray sweatpants were suddenly blooming with dark red stains at the waist. The flannel shirt was soaking through. "It's tearing," he gasped, his face draining of color. "Get back." "I'm not getting back." Hallie grabbed him under the arm, trying to haul him up. "What did you do? You popped a stitch." "No," he wheezed, his eyes rolling back in his head. "The bond. The distance." He couldn't explain it. It wasn't just a stitch popping. It felt like an invisible hook was embedded in his gut, attached to Hallie's soul. By walking away, he was ripping the hook out. The biological imperative of a fated mate, especially one found while critically injured, was absolute. His body needed her proximity to catalyze the healing factor. Without it, his system was crashing. "Help me up," he gritted out. "Inside. I have to go. Inside." Hallie didn't ask questions. She threw her weight against him, dragging him backward into the apartment. He stumbled, half crawling, until they were back on the rug in the living room. He collapsed. Instantly, the bleeding slowed. The color started to return to his face. He took a ragged breath, the tension leaving his shoulders. Hallie slammed the door and locked it, engaging the deadbolt and the chain. She turned on him, hands on her hips, panic giving way to fury. "What was that? What the hell was that?" Roman lay on his back, staring at the ceiling fan. "Scent locking," he murmured. "Biological tether, my wolf. It has claimed you as a safe zone. If I leave your radius before the tissue fully knits, the body rejects the healing." "English, Roman! Speak English!" "I can't leave," he said, looking at her. "Physically, I cannot leave you until I am healed." Hallie stared at him. "You're allergic to leaving my apartment?" "I am tethered to you," he corrected. "If you leave, I have to follow. If I leave, I bleed." Hallie sat down on the coffee table, putting her head in her hands. "This is a nightmare. I have a job. I have a life. I have a brother coming to visit next week." "Then we have a problem," Roman said, sitting up slowly. He checked the wound. It had stopped bleeding the moment he was back in her space. "Because I need at least 72 hours. 3 days? Hallie looked up. "You want to live here for 3 days?" "I don't want to," Roman snapped, his pride stinging. "I have a penthouse, I have chefs, I have a bed that doesn't smell like wet dog. But unless you want a corpse in your hallway, yes, 3 days. Hallie looked at him, really looked at him. He was arrogant, dangerous, and clearly used to getting his way. But he was also hurt, and despite his size, he looked trapped. She sighed, a long, suffering sound. "Okay, 3 days, but we have rules." Roman raised an eyebrow. "Rules?" "Rule 1, you don't eat tater tot. Rule 2, you wear clothes at all times. Rule 3, you do exactly what I say when I say it. This is my territory, Alpha. You play by my rules." Roman stared at her. A slow, dark smirk curved the corner of his mouth. It was the first time she'd seen him smile, and it did dangerous things to her stomach. "Your territory," he repeated, the words rolling around his mouth like fine wine. "Very well, Hallie. I accept the terms of your surrender." "It's not a surrender! It's a truce!" "Keep telling yourself that." Chapter 6. The Coffee Pot Incident. By 7 a.m. the next morning, Roman had decided that human technology was designed solely to mock him. He stood in the kitchen, glaring at the Keurig machine on the counter. It was a plastic abomination. In his penthouse, coffee was brought to him in a porcelain cup, dark and rich, by a beta who knew better than to speak before Roman had taken his first sip. Here, he was faced with buttons, small buttons. "Brew," he commanded the machine. The machine blinked a red light at him. "Add water." "I added water," Roman growled. He tapped the reservoir. "I added the water, you plastic incompetence." He pressed the button again. Nothing. His patience, already frayed by a night of sleeping on a lumpy couch while listening to Hallie breathe in the next room, snapped. He didn't mean to use his full strength. He really didn't. He just wanted to adjust the handle to make sure the pod was seated correctly. He gripped the plastic lever, crack. The handle snapped off in his hand like a dry twig. Roman stared at the piece of black plastic in his palm. Then he looked at the machine, which hissed spitefully and began leaking hot water all over the counter. "Problem?" Roman froze. He turned slowly to see Hallie standing in the doorway. She was wearing panda print pajama bottoms and a tank top, her hair a chaotic halo around her head. She looked soft, sleepy, and entirely unimpressed. "The machine," Roman said, holding up the broken handle. "Committed suicide." Hallie looked at the handle, then at the puddle of water expanding toward her toaster. "That," she said calmly, "was a $60 coffee maker." "It was weak," Roman defended. "I barely touched it." "You crushed it!" Hallie walked over, grabbing a towel to stem the tide of hot water. You have no finesse. You're just big movements and destruction. I am an apex predator, Hallie. I am not designed for pod brewing. Hallie threw the wet towel into the sink and turned on him. She pointed a finger directly at his face. Her eyes were flashing with irritation. Sit, she said. It wasn't a request. It was a command. It was the voice she used on Rottweilers who were thinking about eating a Chihuahua. It was sharp, authoritative, and brooked no argument. Roman's knees hit the chair before his brain even registered the order. He sat down at the kitchen table with a heavy thud. Silence stretched between them. Roman stared at Hallie. Hallie stared at Roman. Did you? Roman started, his voice sounding confused. Did you just command me? Hallie looked equally shocked. She lowered her finger. I think I did. And you listened. Roman frowned. He looked down at his hands. His wolf, the primal, instinctual beast that lived under his skin, was currently purring. It liked the command. It liked her taking charge. It felt right. His human side, however, was mortified. I didn't listen, he lied, crossing his arms. I was just tired of standing. You sat the second I said it, Hallie said, a slow grin spreading across her face. Oh my God, it works on you. It does not work on me. Do not do it again. Sit, Hallie said experimentally. I am already sitting! Roman roared, though he couldn't help the way his body relaxed into the chair. Stay, she said, backing toward the pantry. I am not a dog, Hallie. Wait, she held up a hand. I'm getting the French press. It's glass and metal. Even you can't break it, but you have to stay there. Roman gripped the edge of the table. He wanted to get up. He wanted to storm over there and prove he wasn't controlled by a 5'4" human in panda pajamas, but his legs felt heavy, comfortable. She is handling it, his wolf whispered. Let the mate handle it. Fine, Roman grumbled, slouching in the chair. But only because I require caffeine. From the floor, Tater Tot let out a sharp bark. Roman looked down. The pug was staring at him with his milky eyes. Not a word from you, Roman warned the dog. Tater Tot sneezed and trotted over to pee on the cabinet door, where the coffee maker had died. Hallie! Roman yelled. The rat is desecrating your kitchen! He's marking his territory, Hallie called from the pantry. Maybe you should take notes on how to behave. Roman closed his eyes and prayed for the patience not to shift and eat the entire apartment complex. 3 days. He only had to survive 3 days. He wasn't going to make it. Chapter 7. The Midnight Truth. The storm hit Seattle like a divine punishment. It wasn't just rain. It was a torrential assault that turned the streets into rivers and hammered against Hallie's apartment windows with a violence that made the glass rattle in the frames. It was 2 a.m. Hallie was wide awake, staring at the ceiling fan, which was spinning lazily in the dark. Beside her bed, Tater Tot was currently trying to dig a hole through the floorboards. The pug panted rhythmically, his claws clicking frantically against the wood every time thunder boomed overhead. It's okay, Tot, Hallie whispered, reaching down to pat his trembling flank. It's just noise. Big, stupid noise. The dog ignored her and continued his excavation project. Hallie sighed, kicking off her duvet. The air in the apartment felt heavy, charged with static that made the hair on her arms stand up. It wasn't just the storm, it was him. Even with the bedroom door closed, she could feel Roman's presence in the living room. It was like living with a generator humming in the background, a low-frequency vibration of power and danger that seeped through the drywall. I need water, she muttered, sliding her feet into her slippers. She opened her bedroom door and padded down the hallway. The living room was illuminated only by the intermittent flashes of lightning that strobed through the balcony doors. Roman wasn't on the couch, where she'd left him with the pillow and the duvet. He was standing by the window, his forehead pressed against the cold glass, staring out into the deluge. He was shirtless again. Apparently, he had a vendetta against shirts, and the lightning cast stark shadows across the landscape of his back. The scars were more visible in this light. There were old ones, silver and faded, crisscrossing his shoulder blades. And then there was the fresh bandage on his side, white against his tanned skin. "You should be sleeping," Hallie said softly. Roman didn't startle. He didn't even turn. Wolves don't sleep when the barometer drops this low. The pressure, it itches. Hallie walked over, wrapping her arms around herself to ward off the chill. "My knee aches when it rains. I guess we're both elderly." Roman snorted, a low, rough sound. He turned his head slightly, his amber eyes catching a stray beam of light from a street lamp below. They looked molten, glowing with a bioluminescence that shouldn't exist in human biology. "You are not elderly, Hallie. You are painfully young." "I'm 26, she defended, moving to stand beside him. "I have a 401k, I have back pain, I own a slow cooker. I'm basically 80. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the rain lash against the city. The dynamic between them had shifted since the command voice incident in the kitchen. Roman was less aggressive, more watchful. And Hallie was realizing that her fear had evaporated, replaced by a curiosity that was probably going to get her killed. "Why were you alone?" she asked. The question hung in the air, heavier than the thunder. Roman stiffened, his hands, resting on the windowsill, curled into fists so tight his knuckles turned white. "I told you," he said, his voice dropping to that gravelly register. "It was an ambush." "I know how you got hurt," Hallie clarified, turning to look at his profile. "I'm asking why an alpha, a king apparently, was fighting in an alley without backup. You said wolves don't travel alone. Where is your pack?" Roman closed his eyes. For a long moment, the only sound was the drumming of the rain and the distant wail of a siren. "He stayed behind," Roman whispered. The admission sounded like it was being torn out of his throat. "Who?" "Elias, my beta." Roman opened his eyes, and the pain in them was so raw it made Hallie's chest ache. "We were meeting an informant. It was supposed to be a neutral ground. But the Severed, they knew we were coming. They had a sniper." He took a shaky breath, the muscles in his jaw jumping. "They use silver nitrate rounds. If it hits you, it burns the healing factor out of your blood." Elias took the first shot. It was meant for my head. Hallie reached out, her hand hovering over his arm, before she gently settled it on his bicep. His skin was fever hot. "He took the shot," Roman continued, staring at the rain as if he could see the memory playing out on the glass. "And then he tackled the shooter. He yelled at me to run. He ordered his alpha to run." "And you did," Hallie said softly, "because he gave you a chance." "I ran like a coward," Roman spat, the self-loathing dripping from every word. "I left him bleeding in a warehouse while I scrambled into the sewers like a rat. A king does not leave his men behind, Hallie. A king dies with them." "A dead king can't save anyone," Hallie countered firmly. Roman looked at her then, really looked at her. The agony in his expression was a physical weight. "I don't even know if he's alive. The bond, the pack bond, it's silent. I can't feel him. It's like a phantom limb. I reach for him and there is nothing but static." Hallie didn't know what to say. She couldn't imagine a connection that deep, a psychic tether that let you feel another person's heartbeat. "I fix dogs," she said suddenly. Roman blinked, thrown by the non sequitur. "What?" "You asked me yesterday why I do it, why I take the aggressive ones, the biters, the ones everyone says should be put down." Hallie looked down at her hands. "My dad, he wasn't a wolf. He was just a mean drunk. When he was angry, he was a monster. I spent my whole childhood trying to be quiet, trying to be good, thinking if I just behaved perfectly, he wouldn't yell." She looked up at Roman. "I couldn't fix him. No matter how good I was, he stayed broken. So now, I fix the ones who can't speak for themselves. I take the monsters and I show them they don't have to be monsters." Roman turned fully toward her. The predatory edge was gone, replaced by a profound, heavy sadness. He reached out, his large hand hesitating before he tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was incredibly gentle, contrasting sharply with the violence she knew he was capable of. "You think you can fix me, Hallie?" He murmured, "I don't think you're broken, Roman." She whispered, leaning slightly into his palm, "I think you're just hurt, and wounds heal." The air between them crackled. It wasn't the scary lightning storm static anymore, it was magnetic. Roman lowered his head, his gaze dropping to her mouth. The pull was undeniable, a biological gravity that dragged them together. "You smell like rain," he murmured, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "And hope. It is a dangerous combination." Hallie's breath hitched. She should pull away. She should tell him to go sleep on the couch. But she didn't. Is hope dangerous to a wolf? "Hope," Roman said, his lips inches from hers, "is the only thing that can kill an alpha faster than silver." A crash of thunder shook the entire building. From the hallway, Tater Tot let out a blood-curdling scream of terror and came barreling into the room, sliding across the floor and slamming into Roman's shins. The moment shattered. Roman jumped back, looking down at the wheezing pug. Does this animal have no sense of timing? Hallie let out a shaky laugh, her heart still hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "He's a lover, not a fighter, Roman." Roman glared at the dog, but he didn't kick him away. Instead, he reached down and scooped the trembling potato dog up with one hand, holding him against his chest. Tater Tot immediately stopped shaking and licked Roman's chin. "Dignity," Roman sighed, looking at Hallie over the dog's head. "I have lost all of it." Chapter 8. The Intruder. The next morning, the sun had the audacity to shine as if the apocalypse hadn't happened the night before. Hallie was in the kitchen, attempting to make scrambled eggs while navigating around a 6'4" obstacle. Roman was sitting at the small table, looking comically oversized for the furniture. He was wearing the gray sweatpants and the flannel shirt, which he had unbuttoned halfway because of the heat, exposing an amount of chest that Hallie was trying very hard to ignore. "The coffee," Roman rumbled, staring at the French press, "is acceptable. It lacks the grit of the other machine." "That grit was plastic sediment," Hallie said, flipping an egg. "You were drinking microplastics, Roman." "It added texture." Hallie rolled her eyes and plated the eggs. "Eat. You need the protein. Your healing factor is burning calories faster than I can buy groceries. You owe me $50 for the steak you ate raw at 3 a.m. "I will buy you a cow," Roman said dismissively, digging into the eggs. "A herd of cows, and a new coffee robot." "It's a Keurig, not a robot." Ding dong! The doorbell chimed, a cheerful two-note sound that stopped Hallie's heart cold. She froze, the spatula hovering mid-air. "Who is that?" Roman's head snapped up. His demeanor shifted instantly from grumpy breakfast companion to lethal weapon. He sniffed the air. "It's probably a package," Hallie whispered, though she knew she hadn't ordered anything. "Mail," Roman growled, his voice dropping to a subvocal vibration. "Young, high adrenaline, carrying laundry detergent?" "Laundry detergent?" Hallie frowned, then her eyes widened. "Oh no." She dropped the spatula. "No, no, no. He's early. He's 4 days early." "Who?" Roman stood up, and the kitchen suddenly felt very small. "My brother, Toby!" Hallie rushed to the door, then rushed back to Roman, flapping her hands at him. "Hide! Go to the bedroom! Get in the closet!" "I am a king," Roman said, looking offended. "I do not hide in closets." "You are a naked man in my apartment wearing my ex-boyfriend's sweatpants!" Hallie hissed, shoving at his solid chest. It was like shoving a brick wall. "If Toby sees you, he'll freak out. He's protective. He thinks I'm single." "You are single," Roman pointed out unhelpfully. Click. The sound of a key turning in the lock. Hallie froze. "He has a key. I forgot he has a key." The door swung open. "Halle Berry!" A voice cracked from the hallway. "Guess who finished finals early and didn't crash the car on the way here?" Toby Bennett walked in. He was 19, lanky, wearing a hoodie that said, "I paused my game to be here," and carrying a massive duffel bag and a basket of laundry. He dropped the laundry basket when he saw the giant man standing in the kitchen holding a fork. Silence descended on the apartment. Absolute, suffocating silence. Toby looked at Roman. Roman looked at Toby. Hallie looked at the window, considering if jumping out would be less awkward. Toby blinked. his eyes darting from Roman's scars to the ripped sweatpants, and then to the healing bandage peeking out from the flannel. Toby said, his voice cracking. Hallie? Why is there a tank in our kitchen? Roman took a slow sip of coffee, maintaining unblinking eye contact with the teenager. Hi, Toby, Hallie squeaked, stepping between them. She threw her arms out wide, jazz hand style. Surprise! You're here! Early! So early! Who is he? Toby pointed a shaking finger at Roman. And why is he wearing Greg's pants? Is Greg back? Did Greg take steroids? I am not Greg, Roman said, his voice deep and terrifyingly calm. Right! No! Not Greg! Hallie laughed hysterically. This is... She looked at Roman. He raised an eyebrow, daring her to lie. This is my boyfriend, Hallie blurted out. Toby's jaw dropped. Your what? Boyfriend. New boyfriend. Very new. Brand new. Hallie was sweating. His name is... Roman. Roman, Toby repeated. He looked at the man again. Roman looked like he ate people like Toby for a mid-morning snack. Where did you meet him? Prison? Tinder, Hallie shouted. We met on Tinder. Swiped right. It was a match. A super like. Roman slowly set his coffee cup down. He walked around the table, moving with that fluid, predatory grace that made the hair on the back of Toby's neck stand up. He extended a hand the size of a dinner plate. Hello, Toby, Roman said. I have heard little about you. Toby stared at the hand, then slowly reached out to shake it. Roman squeezed, just enough to let the kid know that he could crush his bones into dust if he wanted to. Nice to meet you, Toby squeaked, wincing. He pulled his hand back and looked at his sister. Okay, cool. I'm just going to put my laundry in your room, and maybe call Mom, and the National Guard. Great idea, Hallie beamed. Toby grabbed his bags and scuttled toward the guest room, giving Roman a wide berth. As soon as the bedroom door clicked shut, Hallie turned on Roman, burying her face in her hands. Tinder. I said Tinder. I am a dead woman. Roman leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. A smirk tugged at his lips. I think it went well. He seems... edible. Do not eat my brother, Roman. No promises. He smells like Axe body spray and fear. Chapter 9. The Thanksgiving Test. The dinner was a disaster waiting to happen. Because Hallie hadn't been expecting guests, and because Roman had eaten all the eggs, the menu consisted of frozen pizza and a bag of baby carrots. They sat at the small round table, Hallie, Toby, and Roman. Tater Tot was under the table, chewing loudly on Toby's shoelaces. The tension was thicker than the mozzarella cheese. Toby was staring at Roman. He had been staring at Roman for 20 minutes straight. The kid wasn't dumb. He was a gamer, a conspiracy theorist, and a biological science major. He knew biology. And he knew that the man sitting across from him didn't fit the standard textbook definition. So, Toby said, stabbing a baby carrot with his fork. Roman, what do you do for work? Besides, lifting heavy objects? Roman didn't look up from his pizza. He was eating it with a knife and fork, which Toby found deeply suspicious. Security. Security, Toby repeated, like mall cop or I kill people for the government security. Private contracting, Roman said smoothly. I manage risk. Cool. Toby narrowed his eyes. And where are you from? You have an accent. Is it European? Transylvanian? Hallie kicked Toby under the table. Stop grilling him, Tobes. He's from here. He's local. I'm from the north, Roman said at the same time. Toby looked between them. Okay, local north. Got it. He leaned forward. So, Roman, how did you get that scar on your face, the one that looks like a claw mark? Hallie froze. It was a car accident. Bar fight, Roman said. They looked at each other. A car accident in a bar, Hallie corrected quickly. He drove into a pub, very tragic. Toby dropped his fork. It clattered loudly on the plate. Okay, cut the crap. the teenager said, his voice shaking but determined. Who are you, really? Because I've watched you for the last hour. You haven't blinked, not once. You caught a fly out of the air with your bare hand without looking at it, and when the neighbor's dog barked earlier, you growled. Like, literally growled. Hallie's heart slammed into her throat. Toby, don't be rude. I'm not being rude, Hallie. I'm being observant. Toby stood up, pointing a finger at Roman. You're not a boyfriend. You're something else. Are you in the mob? Are you a fugitive? Roman stopped eating. He slowly wiped his mouth with a napkin. He looked at Toby with an expression that was unreadable. I am not in the mob, Roman said quietly. Then what are you? Toby demanded. Show me your ID. If you're dating my sister, I want to see a driver's license. I don't carry a license, Roman said. See? Toby looked at Hallie triumphantly. No ID. He's a ghost. He's probably wanted for murder. Toby, stop! Hallie stood up too. No, I won't stop. You bring this giant into our house, he's wearing Greg's pants, he's eating 4 pizzas by himself, and he looks like he could snap my neck with a thought. Toby was shouting now, his protective instinct overriding his fear. I'm not letting him stay here with you unless I know he's safe. Roman stood up. The movement was silent, but it sucked all the oxygen out of the room. He towered over the table, over Toby, over everything. I would never hurt her, Roman said. The command voice bled into his tone, low and resonating. It wasn't a shout, but the glasses on the table vibrated. Toby flinched, clutching the back of his chair. What? How did you do that? With your voice? Roman, sit down, Hallie warned, using her trainer tone. Roman's head snapped toward her. He hesitated, his jaw working. The conflict between his instinct to dominate the challenger, Toby, and his instinct to obey the mate, Hallie, was playing out on his face. He's questioning my honor, Roman growled. He's my brother, Hallie said firmly. Sit down. Roman glared at Toby one last time, then slowly, begrudgingly, sank back into his chair. Toby watched this interaction with wide eyes. He looked at Hallie, then he looked at Roman, then he looked at Tater Tot, who was happily chewing on the table leg. A look of dawning, horrified realization washed over Toby's face. Oh my God, Toby whispered. What? Hallie asked, panic rising. Toby pointed at Hallie. You're using your bad dog voice on him. I am not. You are. That was the tone you used on Mr. Henderson's Rottweiler. Toby backed away slowly. And he listened. He actually said. Toby looked at Roman again. He looked at the amber eyes that reflected the light like a cat's. He looked at the superhuman stillness. He's not a criminal. Toby breathed, his voice barely audible. He's... Hallie, tell me I'm crazy. Tell me I've played too much Elden Ring. You play too much Elden Ring, Hallie said quickly. His eyes are glowing, Toby whispered. The lights are off in the kitchen, Hallie, and his eyes are literally glowing gold. Hallie looked. He was right. Roman's agitation had caused his control to slip. His eyes were twin burning coals in the dim room. Toby stumbled back against the counter, knocking over the salt shaker. That guy isn't human, Toby said, the reality crashing down on him. Hallie, what is in our kitchen? Chapter 10, The Drop. The air in the kitchen didn't just feel heavy. It felt pressurized, like the cabin of an airplane seconds before the oxygen masks drop. What is in our kitchen? Toby repeated, his voice trembling. He pointed a shaking finger at Roman, who was currently vibrating with a lethal, restrained energy. Roman opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to lie, perhaps to finally tell the truth, but the decision was taken out of his hands. The living room window exploded. It wasn't a rock, it wasn't a bird. It was a canister of tear gas, followed immediately by the concussive crack thump of a flashbang grenade. Down, Roman roared. The sound wasn't human. It was a command that bypassed the auditory nerve and slammed directly into the brainstem. Hallie dropped to the linoleum instantly, dragging Toby down by his hoodie. White smoke hissed into the apartment, filling the space with a blinding chemical fog. Tater Tot screamed, a high-pitched seal noise, and scrambled under the cabinets.
Clear the room,
A mechanical voice shouted from the balcony. Target acquired. Lethal force authorized. Laser sights cut through the smoke, dancing across the cabinets, the fridge, and Toby's back. They found us, Roman snarled. He was crouching over Hallie and Toby, shielding them with his massive body. The severed. Are those guns? Toby shrieked, pressing his face into the dirty kitchen floor. Why do they have guns? I thought you were a mall cop. Stay down, Roman ordered. He looked at Hallie. His eyes were no longer just glowing. They were two suns burning in the smoke. Do not move, no matter what you see. Roman, you're hurt. Hallie coughed, her eyes watering from the gas. You can't. Another canister smashed through the kitchen window, landing on the table. The pizza sizzled. 3 figures in tactical gear rappelled through the shattered balcony doors. They wore gas masks and carried assault rifles loaded with magazines taped with blue, silver nitrate. Roman stood up. He didn't look at the gunman. He looked at Hallie. There was a moment of profound apology in his expression, a silent, forgive me. And then he closed his eyes. He dropped the veil. To Toby, it looked like a magic trick from a horror movie. To Hallie, it looked like physics breaking. One moment, Roman was a 6'4" man in tight flannel and sweatpants. The next, there was a sickening sound of wet tearing, fabric and flesh simultaneously, and an explosion of mass that shouldn't have been possible. The flannel shirt disintegrated. Greg's sweatpants didn't stand a chance. In their place stood a nightmare. This wasn't the coyote-sized dog Hallie had carried to her car. That had been a biological compression, a survival tactic. This was the king. He was 8 feet tall at the shoulder, a behemoth of midnight black fur and corded muscle that took up half the kitchen. His head brushed the hanging pot rack, sending copper pans clattering to the floor. His teeth were the length of steak knives. Toby stopped screaming. He stopped breathing. He just stared, his brain unable to process the data. The tactical team hesitated. Even trained killers paused when a mythological monster materialized next to the refrigerator. That hesitation cost them their lives. Roman moved. He was a blur of obsidian violence. He lunged across the kitchen island, his claws tearing through the granite countertop like it was cardboard to get to the first gunman. The gunman fired. Pop, pop, pop. The bullets hit Roman's shoulder, sizzling as the silver made contact, but Roman didn't slow down. He swiped one massive paw. The gunman flew backward, smashing through the drywall into the hallway. The second gunman turned to run. Roman's jaws snapped around his tactical vest, lifting the 200-pound man into the air and tossing him through the open balcony doors. He plummeted 3 stories into the rainy night. The third gunman aimed his rifle at Hallie. No! Toby yelled, grabbing a bottle of dish soap and throwing it. It bounced harmlessly off the gunman's helmet, but the distraction worked. Roman spun, a low, vibrating roar shaking the foundation of the building. He didn't bite this one. He simply body-checked him. The impact sounded like a car crash. The gunman hit the refrigerator so hard, the door dented inward, and he slid to the floor, unconscious. Silence fell. The kitchen was destroyed. The air was thick with smoke, drywall dust, and the copper tang of blood. Roman stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving. Blood dripped from a graze on his shoulder where the silver had hit him. He turned slowly, his massive paws clicking on the broken glass. He looked down at Hallie and Toby. He was terrifying. A predator designed by nature to kill everything in its path. Good boy, Hallie whispered, her voice shaking so hard it was barely audible. The giant wolf froze. He blinked, the feral gold in his eyes dimming slightly. He let out a soft chuff of air and nudged Tater Tot, who had waddled out to investigate the unconscious gunman, away from the danger. Chapter 11. The Getaway. We need to leave, Hallie said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, detached, clinical. It was the shock. We need to leave right now. Leave? Toby squeaked. He was still lying on the floor, covered in drywall dust. We can't leave. We need an exorcist. We need the Avengers. Hallie, that's a werewolf. That's a literal werewolf. Roman, still in his massive wolf form because shifting back took energy he didn't have, barked sharply. He jerked his head toward the door. He says get up, Hallie translated, grabbing Toby's arm and hauling him to his feet. You speak wolf? Toby looked like he was going to cry. Since when do you speak wolf? Since Monday. Now grab the dog. Hallie grabbed her purse and her keys. Toby scooped up Tater Tot, who was currently trying to lick the boot of the unconscious gunman. They scrambled into the hallway. The fire alarm was blaring now, and neighbors were starting to peek out of their doors. Gas leak! Hallie shouted at Mrs. Higgins in 4B. Don't light a match! They took the stairs. Roman took up the entire stairwell, forced to squeeze his massive bulk around the landings. He moved behind them, a rear guard, growling at any shadow that looked suspicious. They burst out into the alleyway, where the Subaru Forester was parked. It was still raining. Get in! Hallie ordered, unlocking the doors. I'm not getting in a car with Cool Joe! Toby yelled, backing away. Roman didn't have time for teenage rebellion. He moved forward, lowered his head, and physically shoved Toby into the back seat with his snout. Toby shrieked and scrambled across the upholstery. Shotgun, Hallie yelled, jumping into the driver's seat. Roman looked at the front passenger seat. Then he looked at his own 8-foot-long body. He let out a huff of annoyance. There was a sickening crack snap sound, like dry wood breaking. Oh God, don't look, Toby covered his eyes. The sounds. Why are the sounds so wet? Steam rose from Roman's body as he forced the shift. It was agonizing. He burned calories by the thousands, his body knitting bones and reshaping muscle in seconds. The passenger door opened. Roman fell into the seat. He was human again. He was also completely naked, covered in drywall dust and blood, and gasping for air. Drive, he rasped, his head lolling back against the headrest. North, I'll give you coordinates. Hallie slammed the car into reverse, ignoring the fact that a naked man was bleeding on her upholstery. She spun the wheel, tires screeching on the wet asphalt, and peeled out of the alley just as a black SUV turned the corner behind them. They're following us! Toby yelled from the back, clutching Tater Tot like a stress ball. Black SUV, tinted windows, definitely bad guys. Hallie, Roman wheezed, his eyes closed. Do you know how to drive aggressively? I learned to drive in Boston, Hallie said, her knuckles white on the wheel. Hold on. She didn't brake for the turn. She yanked the wheel left, drifting the Subaru, a car designed for soccer moms and camping trips, around a corner with surprising precision. Left at the light, Roman instructed, his voice weak. Get to the highway. Who are they? Toby demanded. Why do they want to kill us? And why are you naked? Toby, shut up, Hallie shouted. He's naked because his clothes exploded. It's physics. That is not physics, Hallie. That is magic. That is David Copperfield crap. Roman. Hallie glanced at him. The silver burn on his shoulder looked angry, the skin around it black and veined. You're hurt. Silver, he grunted. Burns. I'll heal. Once we're safe. Where are we going? Safe house. Roman murmured. Bunker. Sovereign territory. He opened his eyes, turning to look at Toby in the rearview mirror. His eyes were still glowing faintly. Kid, Roman said. Toby flinched. Yeah? Check the floor bag behind my seat. There should be a Glock 19. Do you know how to use it? I've played Call of Duty, Toby offered weakly. Don't shoot us. Roman sighed, closing his eyes again. If the SUV gets within 20 feet, aim for the tires. I am not shooting a gun, Toby yelled. I am a pacifist. I am a liberal arts major. Today, Roman said, passing out, you are the rear gunner. Congratulations on the promotion. Chapter 12. The Safe House. The drive took an hour. They lost the tail near the industrial district, thanks to Hallie cutting through a construction site that Roman navigated her through while half-conscious. The safe house wasn't a house. It was a bunker built into the side of a cliff overlooking the Puget Sound, hidden behind a facade that looked like an abandoned water treatment plant. Hallie pulled the Subaru up to a rusted gate. Voice panel. Roman mumbled, waking up. Lean me toward the window. Hallie rolled down the window. Roman leaned out, his voice a wrecked growl. Alpha 9 Zulu King. The rusted gate didn't swing open. The ground beneath them rumbled, and a ramp descended from the concrete wall. Okay, Toby whispered from the back seat. You have a Batcave. Of course you have a Batcave. They drove down the ramp into a subterranean garage. It was sleek, concrete, and filled with cars that cost more than Hallie's entire life earnings. Black SUVs, a sports car, and the motorcycle. The garage door sealed behind them with a heavy pressurized hiss. "We're safe," Roman said, unbuckling his seatbelt. He groaned as he moved, the silver burn clearly agonizing. They piled out of the car. The air here was cool and smelled of filtered oxygen and oil. "There are towels in the locker." Roman gestured to a wall of metal cabinets. "And clothes. I need to cover up." Toby scrambled to get the towels, mostly so he didn't have to look at Roman's nakedness anymore. He threw a large bath towel at the Alpha. Roman wrapped it around his waist with practiced dignity, despite the fact that he looked like he'd been through a blender. "Hallie," Roman said, leaning against the hood of her car. "Take the keys. Take the SUV in slot 3. It's armored. Take your brother and the dog. Go to the safe house in Oregon. I'll wire you money." Hallie paused, tater tot tucked under her arm. She turned slowly. "Excuse me?" "You can't stay here," Roman said, his face hardening. "The Severed know I'm alive. They know you helped me. This is going to be a war. I won't have you in the crossfire." "You dragged us into the crossfire when you bled on my rug!" Hallie snapped. "And now I am getting you out." Roman pushed off the car, stepping toward her. "Go. Now. Before the lockdown protocols engage." "No," Hallie said. Roman blinked. "No?" "I am not leaving you," Hallie said, stepping into his space. She poked him in the chest, right over a fading bruise. "You have a bullet hole in your shoulder that looks like it's rotting. You passed out twice in the car, and you're technically my... whatever this bond thing is." "Mate," Toby supplied helpfully from behind a pillar. "It's called a mate bond. I Googled it in the car. It's a biological imprint common in paranormal romance literature." "Shut up, Toby!" Hallie and Roman yelled in unison. Hallie turned back to Roman. "I am not leaving you to die alone in a concrete box, Roman. We are staying." "Hallie," Roman growled, the warning deep in his chest. "I am the king. You do not disobey a direct order." Hallie stared at him. She rose to her full height, which put her nose at the level of his collarbone, and narrowed her eyes. "Sit," she said. The silence in the garage was deafening. Roman's eye twitched, his hands clenched into fists. He fought it. He fought the compulsion with every ounce of his alpha will. Veins bulged in his neck, but his knees bent. Slowly, agonizingly, Roman lowered himself until he was sitting on the bumper of the Subaru. He looked up at her, fury and awe warring in his eyes. "I hate that," he hissed. "Yeah, well, it works." Hallie crossed her arms. "We're staying. Now, where is the first aid kit? I need to dig a silver bullet out of your shoulder." Roman stared at her for a long moment. Then, he let out a defeated breath and slumped against the car. "Medical bay," he grumbled. "Level 2. Down the hall." "Good boy," Hallie patted his cheek. Roman closed his eyes. "If you tell anyone I said," he threatened Toby without looking, "I will feed you to the dog." "My dog has no teeth," Toby defended. "I will buy him teeth," Roman promised. Chapter 13. The Alpha's Den. The medical bay was more like a private hospital room. It was sterile, white, and stocked with supplies that Hallie was pretty sure were illegal for civilians to own. Toby had been banished to the entertainment sector, a living room with a PlayStation 5, which had immediately bought his silence, with Tater Tot. That left Hallie and Roman alone in the Alpha's private quarters. The adrenaline was crashing. Hallie's hands had started shaking about 10 minutes ago and hadn't stopped. She was currently trying to thread a needle to stitch the graze on Roman's shoulder, but the metal kept slipping. "You're shaking," Roman said. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, a massive California king with black silk sheets because, of course, he had black silk sheets. He was wearing a pair of clean black sweatpants he'd found in the locker. "I'm fine," Hallie lied, stabbing the air with the needle. I've never been shot at before. or flashbanged, or seen a man turn into a bear wolf. Wolf, Roman corrected gently. He reached out and took the needle from her trembling fingers. He set it on the bedside table. Stop. I have to fix it, Hallie insisted, her voice cracking. The silver. The silver is out. The wound is clean. It will heal on its own now that you are close. He took her hands. His palms were rough, warm, and massive, engulfing hers completely. Look at me, Hallie. She looked up. The gold in his eyes had settled into a warm, molten amber. You did well, he said softly. You kept your head. You drove the car. You saved us. I was terrified, she whispered. A tear slipped out, hot and fast. I am terrified. Good. Roman pulled her closer until she was standing between his spread knees. Fear keeps you alive. Only fools are fearless. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her into him. Hallie didn't resist. She collapsed against his chest, burying her face in the crook of his neck. He smelled like soap and rain and that deep, earthy musk that made her head spin. The contact was electric. It was the mate bond, singing in the aftermath of danger. The need to touch, to confirm survival, was overwhelming. Roman let out a low rumble, resting his chin on top of her head. He rubbed big, soothing circles on her back. I'm sorry, he murmured into her hair. I never wanted this life to touch you. Too late, Hallie mumbled into his skin. She pulled back slightly, looking at his face. The exhaustion was etched deep in the lines around his eyes. So, this is your life? Bunkers and bullets? Until the war is over, he said. Yes. He looked at her mouth. Hallie looked at his. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with a tension that had nothing to do with fear. It was the one bed trope coming to life, and neither of them was fighting it. Roman, Hallie whispered. He leaned in, his gaze dropping to her lips. Yes? My brother is in the next room playing FIFA. Roman froze inches from her mouth. He closed his eyes and let out a long, suffering sigh. I know. He gritted out. I can hear him yelling at the television. He pulled back, though he didn't let go of her waist. I assume, he said dryly, that the no-touching rule is still in effect. Hallie looked at the bed, then at Roman's bare chest, then at the door. We're tired, she said, her voice breathy. And shocked, and we should probably sleep. Sleep, Roman repeated, sounding disappointed. Just sleep. Fine. He released her and laid back on the bed, claiming the left side. He patted the space beside him. Get in. I should go to the couch with Toby. The couch is a sectional, and the dog snores, Roman said, pulling the duvet up. And if you leave this room, my shoulder will start hurting again. Do you want me to suffer? You are manipulative, Hallie accused, kicking off her boots. I am resourceful. She climbed into the bed. It was ridiculously comfortable. She stayed on the far edge, leaving a foot of space between them. Lights, Roman commanded. The room plunged into darkness. For a few minutes, they lay in silence. Then, Hallie shivered. The bunker was cold. She felt a warm, heavy arm drape over her waist. Roman pulled her backward until her back was pressed against his chest. He was a human furnace. Purely for thermal regulation, he mumbled against her neck. Uh-huh, Hallie whispered, closing her eyes. She felt safe. For the first time in 3 days, she felt completely, utterly safe. Good night, Alpha, she whispered. Roman tightened his hold slightly. Good night, Trouble. Chapter 14, The Training Montage. Morning in the bunker didn't come with sunlight. It came with the harsh, rhythmic clang of metal on metal echoing from the lower levels. Hallie woke up alone in the massive black soak bed. The space beside her was cold, the sheets rumpled but empty. For a second, panic flared in her chest, a residual instinct from the last 3 days of constant danger, but then she heard it again. Clang. Hiss. Clang. She rolled out of bed, her body aching in places she didn't know existed. She grabbed the oversized flannel shirt Roman had discarded the day before, the one that survived the explosion before he shifted, and pulled it on over her tank top. It smelled like cedar and gunpowder. She followed the noise down the concrete corridor to the gymnasium. It was a cavernous space, equipped with enough weights to train a football team and a sparring ring that looked like it had seen actual blood. Roman was there. He was shirtless, again, wearing only the black sweatpants. He was attacking a heavy bag with a ferocity that was terrifying to watch. Right hook, left jab, roundhouse kick. The bag, which must have weighed 200 pounds, swung violently on its chain, threatening to snap the ceiling mount. His skin was slick with sweat, the scars on his back rippling with every movement. But Hallie noticed something else. Every time he threw a left hook, his face tightened, a micro flinch. The silver burn on his shoulder was screaming at him, but he was ignoring it. "You're going to pop a stitch," Hallie called out, leaning against the doorframe. Roman froze mid-punch. He didn't turn around immediately. He took a deep breath, centering himself, before dropping his hands. "I'm testing the range of motion," he said, his voice rough. He grabbed a towel from the bench and wiped his face. "If I cannot fight, I cannot protect you." "You fought a SWAT team 12 hours ago," Hallie pointed out, walking into the room. "I think you've proved your point." "That was brute force," Roman muttered, wincing as he stretched his left arm. "Precision requires discipline, and right now I am stiff." Hallie stopped in front of him. Up close, the sheer size of him was overwhelming. He radiated heat like a furnace. "You're stiff because you're healing," she said, "and because you're stubborn. Sit down." Roman looked at her. A spark of amusement lit his amber eyes. "Are you going to command me again, little human?" "If I have to, sit." Roman sat on the edge of the sparring ring. He looked like a king granting an audience, even in sweatpants. Hallie stepped between his knees, a position that was becoming dangerously familiar, and put her hands on his shoulders. She began to massage the knot of tension at the base of his neck. Roman groaned. It was a low rumble of a sound that vibrated through his chest and into her palms. "Better?" she asked. "Torture," he murmured, leaning his head forward. "Do it again." "You know," Hallie said, digging her thumbs into a particularly hard muscle. "This is exactly how I rehab aggressive shepherds. Positive reinforcement and physical touch." Roman opened one eye. "Are you comparing the king of the sovereign pack to a sheepdog?" "I'm just saying, the behavior patterns are similar. You growl when you're cranky, you're territorial, and you like having your ears scratched." "I do not like having my ears scratched." Hallie moved her hand up and scratched gently behind his ear. Roman's leg twitched. His eyes rolled back slightly. "Okay, that is acceptable." "See? Good boy." Roman grabbed her wrist. He didn't pull it away. He just held it there, his thumb tracing the pulse point on her wrist. The atmosphere shifted instantly from playful to heavy. "You have to be ready, Hallie," he said quietly. "If the Severed find us again, I might not be able to shift in time. You need to know how to defend yourself." "I have pepper spray," she offered. "Pepper spray is a condiment to a shifter," Roman said dryly. He stood up, towering over her. "Hit me." "What?" "Hit me, as hard as you can." He tapped his abs. "Right here, solar plexus." "I am not punching you, Roman. You're injured." "I am unbreakable. Hit me." Hallie sighed. She made a fist, thumb on the outside, she'd watched movies, and swung. Her fist connected with his stomach. It was like punching a concrete wall wrapped in warm velvet. Her wrist jarred painfully. Roman didn't even blink. He didn't move a millimeter. "Pathetic," he judged. Again. "Hey!" Hallie shook out her hand. "I'm an artist, not a boxer." "You are a target," Roman corrected. He moved behind her, positioning her body. "Widen your stance. Lower your center of gravity. You are small. Use that. If a wolf grabs you, don't try to overpower him. Go for the eyes, the throat, or the knees." He guided her arms into a defensive posture. His chest was pressed against her back, his breath hot on her ear. It felt less like a lesson and more like a seduction. "Like this?" Hallie breathed, her heart rate spiking. Yes, Roman murmured. His hands lingered on her hips a second too long. Now, if I grab you from behind. He wrapped his arm around her neck, gently, mock choking her. Drop your weight, he instructed. Elbow to the gut, hard. Hallie dropped and drove her elbow back. She pulled the punch, not wanting to hurt him. Harder, Roman barked. I am attacking you. Make me regret it. Hallie grit her teeth. She thought about the gunman in her kitchen. She thought about Tater Tot screaming. She channeled that fear and slammed her elbow back with everything she had. Oof, Roman actually exhaled. He stumbled back a step, grinning like a maniac. Good, he praised, his eyes glowing gold. That would have cracked a human rib. Again. They spent the next hour like that, sweaty, bruising, and electrically charged. By the end of it, Hallie was panting, her hair a mess. But she felt stronger, more capable. Roman looked at her, his chest heaving. He reached out and brushed a damp strand of hair from her forehead. You learn fast, he said softly. I have a good teacher, she replied, leaning into his touch. Roman, Toby's voice echoed from the intercom on the wall, shattering the moment. Roman, the computer thingy is doing the beep-boop thingy. It's red. Roman's face hardened instantly. The softness vanished. The king returned. The server, he said, turning toward the door. It's Elias. Chapter 15. The Beta Signal. The war room was a sleek, glass-walled office adjacent to the living room. Screens lined every wall, displaying maps, stock tickers, and security feeds from across the city. Toby was spinning in the expensive ergonomic chair, holding a bag of Cheetos. It started beeping like 2 minutes ago. I didn't touch anything, I swear. Roman strode to the main console, his fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. It's an encrypted distress beacon, alpha-level clearance. Is it him? Hallie asked, standing close enough to see the lines of code scrolling down the screen. Is it Elias? It's his biometric signature. Roman confirmed. His voice was tight with suppressed emotion. He's alive, but his heart rate is erratic. Bradycardia. He's drugged. Can you track him? Toby asked, crunching a Cheeto. The signal is bouncing. Roman muttered, narrowing his eyes. They're moving him. No. Stopped. They stopped Ed. He tapped a key. A map of downtown Seattle zoomed in. A red dot pulsed on a specific building. The Pinnacle Hotel, Roman read. The Grand Ballroom. A hotel? Hallie frowned. Why would kidnappers take a hostage to a 5-star hotel? Roman's face went pale. He slammed his fist onto the desk. It's not a hotel stay, Hallie. It's an auction. An auction? The Severed don't just kill alphas. Roman explained, his voice dripping with venom. They humiliate them. They sell high-ranking wolves to the highest bidder, usually private collectors, illegal fighting rings, or labs. They're selling Elias. That's sick, Toby whispered, dropping the Cheeto bag. When is it? Hallie asked. Roman pointed to the timer on the screen. Tonight. The event is listed as the Solstice Charity Gala. Black tie, invitation only, high security. So we kick down the door, Toby suggested, miming a shotgun. Go full John Wick. No, Roman shook his head. If we breach the perimeter with force, they'll execute him before we get to the elevator. This is a public event, hundreds of human civilians. We can't shift. We can't shoot. Then how do we get him? Hallie asked. Roman turned to look at her. He scanned her face, then her messy flannel shirt, then down to her bare feet. A slow, predatory plan began to form behind his eyes. We don't break in, Roman said smoothly. We walk in. We? Hallie squeaked. I need a way past the biometric scanners, Roman said. I'm in the system as a target. If I walk through the front door, the alarms go off. But if I enter as the +1 of a wealthy, eccentric donor, the security protocols are less invasive. And who's the donor? Toby asked. Roman looked at Hallie. You are. Me? Hallie laughed nervously. Roman, I have $34 in my checking account. I paint dogs for a living. I don't look like a donor. Money is not an issue. Roman said, pulling a sleek black credit card from a hidden compartment in the desk. And neither is the look. We have 6 hours to turn you into a woman who looks like she owns the building. And what do I do? Toby asked. You? Roman tossed him a headset. You are the guy in the chair. You're going to hack the elevator override so we can get Elias out the service exit. Toby looked at the headset like it was the Holy Grail. I was born for this. Chapter 16. The Makeover. I feel ridiculous, Hallie muttered, stepping out of the bathroom. Roman was waiting in the living room. He had already transformed. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. Custom tailored, midnight blue with a silk lapel that emphasized the insane width of his shoulders. His hair was tained, his jaw freshly shaven. He looked devastating. He looked up as Hallie entered. He stopped breathing. The dress Roman had acquired via a terrified personal shopper he'd called on a burner phone was a weapon made of fabric. It was black silk, floor-length, with a slit that went up to her thigh and a back that plunged dangerously low. It hugged every curve, slippery and dark like oil. Hallie tugged self-consciously at the neckline. It's too much. I feel like a Bond villain's girlfriend who dies in the first 15 minutes. Roman crossed the room. He didn't speak. He walked a slow circle around her, his eyes devouring every inch of exposed skin. The air in the room grew hot, charged with that familiar static. He stopped behind her. He reached out, his fingers ghosting over her bare spine. Hallie shivered. You do not look like a victim, Hallie, he whispered, his voice rough with a hunger he wasn't bothering to hide. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a necklace, a simple, brutal choker of diamonds with a single, massive red ruby in the center. The ruby of the sovereign, he murmured, fastening it around her neck. My mother's. Roman, Hallie breathed, touching the cold stone. I can't wear this. It looks expensive enough to buy a small country. It is, he agreed, turning her to face him. He placed his hands on her waist, pulling her flush against him. The friction of the silk against his tuxedo was electric. You look dangerous, he said low. You look like a queen. I'm just a dog walker, Roman. Not tonight, he said intensely. Tonight, you are the distraction, and looking like this? He leaned down, brushing his lips against her ear. You will distract everyone, including me. Guys! Toby yelled from the van parked in the garage. Stop flirting! We have a timetable! Elias is gonna get sold to a glue factory if you don't move! Roman sighed, resting his forehead against Hallie's. I am gonna trade your brother for the beta. Hallie laughed, the sound breaking the tension. Let's go get your boy. Chapter 17. The Gala. Infiltration. The Pinnacle Hotel was dripping with wealth. Crystal chandeliers, towering ice sculptures, and a sea of people wearing clothes that cost more than Hallie's car. A valet opened the door of the armored SUV, which they had cleaned of drywall dust. Roman stepped out first, buttoning his jacket. He turned and offered his hand to Hallie. Showtime, he murmured. Remember, you are bored, you are rich, and you are slightly annoyed to be here. So, channel my inner cat? Hallie took his hand. Exactly. They swept into the lobby. Heads turned. It wasn't just the clothes, it was the energy. Roman moved with the predator's grace, clearing a path through the crowd simply by existing. Hallie, clutching his arm, tried to look bored instead of terrified. Ticket, sir? The concierge at the velvet rope asked. Roman didn't even look at him. He gestured to Hallie. Madam Vance is on the VIP list, Roman said smoothly. Check again. The concierge checked. Ah, yes. Apologies. Right this way. They entered the ballroom. It was a sensory overload. String quartet music, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the scent of expensive perfume masking the underlying smell of wolf. I smell them, Roman whispered, his lips barely moving. Rogues. Everywhere. The waiters. The security. Where is Elias? Hallie whispered back, taking a flute of champagne from a passing tray to blend in. Toby? Roman tapped his earpiece. I'm in, Toby's voice crackled in their ears. The service elevator is locked down, but I'm seeing a heat signature in the sub-basement, room B4. It's guarded. We need to get to the basement, Roman murmured to Hallie. But the stairwell is guarded by two severed enforcers. Distraction? Hallie asked. Big one. Roman scanned the room. His eyes landed on the center of the dance floor. The waltz was ending. Dance with me, he said. Now? It's the best way to move through the room without drawing suspicion. He pulled her onto the floor. His hand settled on the small of her back, burning through the silk. They moved together effortlessly, the mate bond making them anticipate each other's steps. You dance well for a feral creature, Hallie teased, trying to ignore the way everyone was staring at them. I had lessons, Roman muttered, spinning her. Court etiquette, tedious. As they spun near the far wall, Roman spotted it. The fire alarm pull station. Toby, Roman whispered. Can you hack the fire suppression system? I can trigger a silent alarm, Toby replied. It'll unlock the magnetic doors to the basement without causing a panic. But you have 30 seconds before the guards reset it. Do it. 3, 2, 1. A soft click echoed from the service door near the kitchen. Go. Roman released Hallie's hand. Head for the ladies' room, then double back to the service corridor. I'll meet you there. Wait, we're splitting up? Hallie panicked. I draw the eyes, Roman said, straightening his tie. You slip through the cracks. Go. Hallie didn't argue. She turned and walked away, her hips swaying in the black dress. Roman watched her go, ensuring every male eye in the room followed her, and not him. Then he turned toward the two largest guards by the kitchen door. He grabbed a waiter's tray full of champagne glasses. Oops, he deadpanned and hurled the tray directly into the guards' faces. Glass shattered. Chaos erupted. Roman smiled. Let's dance. Chapter 18. The Rescue. The service corridor smelled of bleach and stale cooking oil, a jarring transition from the perfume-heavy air of the ballroom. Hallie kicked off her heels, holding them in one hand as she sprinted down the concrete hallway. The black silk dress swished around her legs, the split allowing her to move fast. Toby! She hissed into her earpiece. I'm at the freight elevator. Where is Roman? He's occupied. Toby's voice crackled, sounding stressed. He just threw a guy through a buffet table. Security is swarming the kitchen. You have a 30-second window before the lockdown seals the basement. Hallie slammed her hand against the elevator call button. Come on, come on! The doors groaned open. It wasn't empty. A waiter stood inside, holding a tray of empty glasses. He looked up, startled to see a barefoot woman in a gown that cost more than his car. Then he saw the ruby at her throat. His eyes flashed. Not gold, but a muddy, sickly yellow. Rogue. He dropped the tray. Glass shattered. He lunged. Hallie didn't think. She dropped her center of gravity, just like Roman had taught her that morning. As the waiter reached for her neck, she drove her elbow into his solar plexus. He grunted, doubling over. But he didn't stop. He was heavy, smelling of sweat and aggression. He grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. Ding! The elevator shook. A hand, massive, manicured, and terrifying, shot through the closing doors, forcing them back open. Roman stood there. His tuxedo jacket was torn at the shoulder, his tie was gone, and his knuckles were split and bleeding. He looked at the waiter holding Hallie. Bad decision, Roman growled. He didn't punch the man. He simply grabbed him by the back of his vest and the seat of his pants and hurled him out of the elevator. The rogue hit the opposite wall with a sickening crunch and slid down, unconscious. Roman stepped inside and hit the button for the sub-basement. He looked at Hallie, scanning her for injuries. You're barefoot, he noted, his chest heaving slightly. Tactical advantage, Hallie said, her voice shaking. She pointed to his torn jacket. You ruined the tux. I bought the tux. I can ruin it. The doors opened on B-level. The air here was colder, damp, and smelled of ozone. Room B4. Roman murmured, taking the lead. Stay behind me. They moved silently past rows of laundry carts. The door to B4 was a heavy steel fire door. Roman didn't bother with the handle. He kicked it. The lock shattered, and the door swung inward. The room was set up like a makeshift surgical theater. In the center, strapped to a gurney, was a man. He was younger than Roman, with sandy blonde hair matted with sweat. He was unconscious, hooked up to an IV drip. "Elias," Roman breathed. He rushed to the gurney, ripping the IV out of his beta's arm. "So touching." A voice drawled from the shadows. Roman froze. He slowly turned, positioning his body between the voice and Hallie. Stepping out from behind a stack of crates was a man in a white suit. He was handsome, in a slimy way, with slick-back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was flanked by 4 massive men holding stun batons. "Vargas," Roman said, the name a curse. "King Roman," Vargas mocked, checking his watch. "You're early. The bidding wasn't supposed to start for another hour. We were just prepping the merchandise." "Let him go," Roman said, his voice dropping to that subvocal growl that usually made people wet themselves. Vargas just laughed. "And miss the payout? Do you know how much a royal beta goes for on the black market? His liver alone covers my overhead for a year." Vargas snapped his fingers. "Subdue him. Don't kill him. Damaged goods sell for less." The 4 guards moved in. They weren't shooting. They wanted to take Roman alive, too. "Hallie," Roman whispered without looking back. "Get Elias to the van." "What? I can't carry him." "Figure it out." Roman exploded into motion. He couldn't shift. The room was too small, and the risk of crushing Elias was too high. He fought as a man, but a man with the strength of a freight train. He caught the first baton swing in his bare hand, ignoring the crackle of electricity that should have dropped him. He twisted the guard's wrist until it snapped, then used the man's body as a shield against the second attacker. Hallie didn't watch. She scrambled to the gurney. Elias was dead weight. "Wake up!" she hissed, slapping the beta's face. "Come on, Sleeping Beauty, we're leaving!" Elias groaned, his eyelids fluttering. "Mom?" "Close enough! Up!" She unlocked the wheel brakes on the gurney. She couldn't carry him, but she could roll him. "Roman!" she yelled. "Move!" Roman ducked a swing that would have taken his head off and delivered a brutal uppercut to Vargas's jaw. The rogue leader stumbled back, spitting blood. "Go!" Roman roared. Hallie shoved the gurney toward the service exit. It rattled over the concrete. Roman was right behind her, walking backward, trading blows with the remaining 2 guards. They burst out onto the loading dock. The rain was still pouring. "Toby!" Hallie screamed into her mic. "Now! Now!" A black van screeched around the corner, drifting sideways and slamming into the dumpster to stop. The side door flew open. "Get in! Get in!" Toby yelled, waving a tire iron menacingly. Hallie shoved the gurney toward the van. Roman grabbed Elias by the belt and the collar, hoisting the 180-pound man into the back like a duffel bag. He shoved Hallie in after him and dived inside just as a bullet sparked off the door frame. "Drive!" Roman bellowed. Toby slammed on the gas. Chapter 19. The Escape. The van fishtailed onto the wet street, knocking over a row of trash cans. Toby was driving with the panic-induced focus of a teenager who had played too much Grand Theft Auto. "Are we clear?" Toby shouted, checking the mirrors. "I think I hit a cone. Did I hit a person? Please tell me it was a cone." "It was a cone," Hallie lied, crawling over the seats to the back. "Keep going. Get to the highway." In the back of the van, the situation was dire. Elias was groaning on the floor, thrashing as the drugs worked through his system. Roman was kneeling over him, checking his pulse, but Roman himself looked terrible. His face was gray, sweat beading on his forehead. The electricity from the stun batons had messed with his nervous system, and the silver burn on his shoulder had torn open again during the fight. Blood was soaking through the white tuxedo shirt. "Elias!" Roman slapped his beta's cheek lightly. "Report! Can you hear me?" Elias blinked, his eyes unfocused. "Alpha? Why are you wearing a tuxedo?" "Did we win?" "We're working on it," Roman grunted. He looked at Hallie. "Check his pupils. Are they dilated?" Hallie crawled over, her silk dress ruined by the dirty van floor. She peered into Elias's eyes. "Yeah, huge, like dinner plates."
Ketamine blend, Roman cursed. They kept him sedated. He's useless for at least an hour. Incoming! Toby yelled from the front. Black SUV at 6 o'clock. They're gaining! Roman tried to stand up, but his leg buckled. The stun baton had hit a nerve cluster in his thigh. I can't stabilize, Roman snarled, frustration radiating off him. Stay down, Hallie ordered. She looked around the van. It was the tech van, filled with Toby's equipment, spare cables, and... Toby, she shouted. Where is the flare gun? Glove box, Toby screamed, swerving to avoid a taxi. Don't shoot it inside the van! Hallie scrambled to the front passenger seat. She popped the glove box. There it was, an orange plastic flare gun. She rolled down the window. The wind and rain whipped her hair into her face. The black SUV was right on their bumper, trying to pit maneuver them. A guy was leaning out the window with a handgun. Eat this, Hallie muttered. She didn't aim for the tires. She aimed for the windshield. She pulled the trigger. Thumps! The flare spiraled through the rain, a blinding red comet. It struck the SUV's windshield, shattering the glass and filling the cabin with blinding red smoke and fire. The SUV swerved violently, spun out across 3 lanes of traffic, and slammed into a concrete divider.
Holy crap!
Toby yelled, staring at the rearview mirror.
You just Michael Bay'd them, Hallie!
You're a killer. I'm a distincture, she corrected, though her hands were shaking so hard she dropped the gun. I distracted them. She climbed back to the rear of the van. Roman was staring at her. His expression was a mix of shock and intense, burning pride. You, he murmured, are terrifying. I learned from the best, she said breathlessly. She collapsed next to him on the floor. Roman wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling deeply. Safe, he whispered to his wolf. Pack is safe. Chapter 20. The Cabin Fever. The return to the bunker was a blur of medical protocols and adrenaline crashes. They got Elias into the medical bay. He was stable, just stoned out of his mind. Toby volunteered to watch him, mostly because he wanted to ask the beta if he had any cool wolf powers, and also because he sensed the atmosphere between Roman and Hallie was about to go nuclear. He was right. Roman and Hallie retreated to the Alpha's quarters, the doors sealed behind them with a heavy, pressurized hiss that sounded like a vault closing. The silence was sudden and deafening. Hallie stood in the middle of the room, shivering. The adrenaline was gone, leaving her cold and acutely aware of the blood on her hands. Some hers, some Roman's, some from the waiter. Her beautiful dress was torn, stained with grease and rain. Roman stood by the bed. He had stripped off his ruined jacket and shirt. His chest was heaving, his skin flushed. The bandage on his shoulder was soaked through, but he didn't seem to care. He was staring at her. It wasn't the way he looked at her during training. It wasn't even the way he looked at her at the gala. This was primal. His pupils were blown wide, swallowing the amber iris until his eyes were almost black. You could have died, he said. His voice was low, vibrating with a suppressed growl. I didn't, Hallie whispered. You jumped into a fight with a rogue. You leaned out of a moving vehicle. He took a step toward her. Do you have any idea what that does to me? To watch you put yourself in danger? I was helping you, Hallie argued, stepping back until her legs hit the edge of the mattress. I was saving your beta.
I am the Alpha,
Roman roared, closing the distance.
I am supposed to protect you. That is the law. That is the instinct.
He grabbed her upper arms. His grip was hard, desperate. He pulled her flush against his bare chest.
When that waiter touched you,
he snarled, lowering his face to hers. My wolf wanted to tear the building down. I wanted to burn the city. Roman, Hallie breathed, her hands finding purchase on his biceps. We're safe. I'm right here. Are you? He buried his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling her scent like it was oxygen. You smell like fear, and blood, and mine. The last word sent a jolt of electricity straight to Hallie's core. The mate bond, which had been a hum in the background, suddenly cranked up to a deafening roar. Her body recognized him not as a man, but as a biological necessity. Roman, she whimpered, tilting her head back to give him access. That small sound broke his control. Roman didn't kiss her gently. He claimed her. He crushed his mouth to hers, devouring her sigh. It was messy, desperate, and filled with the terrifying intensity of a predator who had almost lost his mate. Hallie kissed him back with equal force. She tangled her hands in his hair, pulling him closer. The friction of his skin against hers was maddening. He lifted her easily, wrapping her legs around his waist, and dropped them both onto the bed. The silk dress tore as he shoved the skirt up. Mine, he growled against her skin, trailing hot, open-mouthed kisses down her jawline to the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder. Say it. Yours, Hallie gasped. I'm yours. Roman's canines grazed her skin, sharp, dangerous. Then accepted. He whispered. He bit down. It wasn't a nip, it was a claiming bite, a deep, piercing puncture right over the mating gland that shifters had and humans didn't know existed until it was triggered. Hallie cried out, half pain, half blinding pleasure. A rush of endorphins flooded her system, followed by a golden warmth that spread from the bite mark through her entire body. It felt like drinking the sun. She felt him. She felt his heartbeat sync with hers. She felt his possessiveness, his relief, his love. Roman groaned, licking the drop of blood from the mark. The wound sealed instantly, leaving behind a scar that looked like a silver crescent moon. He pulled back, his eyes glowing pure molten gold. He looked at the mark on her neck, then at her face. Done, he rasped, stroking her cheek with a trembling hand. No going back now, Hallie. Hallie touched the mark. It pulsed under her fingertips. She looked at him, breathless, terrified, and exhilaratingly alive. Good, she whispered. Chapter 21, The Morning After, Part 2. Waking up with a mate. Bond was like waking up with a hangover, but instead of a headache, you had a 6'4" man wrapped around you like an octopus. Hallie opened her eyes. The room was dark, but she could see perfectly. Weird, she could hear Toby snoring 2 rooms away. Weirder, she tried to move. Roman's arm tightened around her waist. Still sleeping, he mumbled into the pillow, not opening his eyes. Roman, Hallie said. Her voice sounded different, huskier. I need to pee. Hold it. I can't hold it. She wriggled out of his grip. He let her go with a grunt of protest. Hallie walked into the ensuite bathroom and turned on the light. She looked in the mirror and screamed. It wasn't a terrified scream, it was a furious one. Roman appeared in the doorway instantly, naked and alert. What is it? Hallie pointed to her neck. There, stark against her pale skin, was the mark. But it wasn't just a scar, it was faint, silvery veins radiating out from the bite, creating a pattern that looked suspiciously like a crown. You branded me, she shouted, turning on him. I thought it would be a little scar, like a hickey. This looks like a tattoo I got in a prison basement. Roman leaned against the doorframe, relaxing when he saw there was no threat. A smug, lazy smile spread across his face. It is the mark of the sovereign, he said, sounding incredibly pleased with himself. It shows everyone that you are under my protection, that you are queen. I didn't agree to be queen. Hallie threw a hand towel at him. I agreed to be yours. There is a difference. I have a job. I have clients. How am I supposed to explain this to Mrs. Gable when I walk her poodle? Oh, sorry about the neck tattoo. I just got married to a werewolf king over the weekend. Technically, Roman stepped forward, trapping her against the sink. You are married. By pack law, the bite is binding. You didn't give me a ring, Hallie argued, crossing her arms. I gave you my soul, Roman murmured, brushing his thumb over the mark. And half my assets, which, frankly, is a better deal than a ring. Hallie glared at him, but the anger was melting. The bond was humming between them, a warm current of affection that made it hard to stay mad. I wanted a ring, she grumbled, leaning into his touch despite herself. I will buy you a ring. Roman kissed her forehead. I will buy you a jewelry store, but first. He pulled back, his expression turning serious. We need to go upstairs. Elias is awake, and he knows who the traitor is. The air in the bathroom chilled instantly. The bubble of domestic bickering popped. Silas? Hallie asked, remembering the name from the files they'd seen. Roman's jaw tightened. If it is Silas, then the war isn't just coming to us. It's already in the house. He turned and walked toward the bedroom to get dressed. Hallie looked at the mark in the mirror one last time. She touched it. It felt warm. She grabbed Roman's shirt from the floor. Okay, she whispered to her reflection. Let's go start a war. Chapter 22. The Traitor Revealed. The walk from the bedroom to the main living area of the bunker felt less like a morning stroll and more like a royal procession, albeit one where the queen was wearing an oversized flannel shirt and the king was barefoot in sweatpants. Roman had his hand on the small of Hallie's back, a heavy, possessive weight that hadn't lifted since he marked her. Every time she moved more than 3 feet away, a low, vibrating growl started in his chest. It was annoying. It was also, Hallie admitted to herself, incredibly hot. They entered the war room. Toby was awake, sitting on a floor with Tater Tot. They were sharing a box of Pop-Tarts. Elias was sitting in the ergonomic chair, looking pale and battered, but alert. He was nursing a mug of coffee with shaking hands. The conversation stopped the moment Hallie and Roman walked in. Toby looked up. His eyes went immediately to Hallie's neck. He dropped his Pop-Tart.
Whoa, Toby whispered. Hallie, you got a tattoo? A face tattoo? On your neck?
Hallie flushed, her hand flying up to cover the silver, vein-like crown pattern radiating from the bite mark. It's not a tattoo, Toby. It's a situation. Elias set his mug down. He looked at Roman, then at Hallie, then back at Roman. He didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. So, Elias rasped, his voice rough from the drugs. It is done. The pack has a matriarch. We're not using that word, Hallie said quickly. I am not a matriarch. I am a dog trainer who has had a very long week. You are the queen, Roman corrected, guiding her to a chair and practically forcing her to sit. He stood behind her, his hands resting on her shoulders, glaring at anyone who dared to look at her for too long. Elias, Roman said, his tone shifting from husband to general instantly. Report. What happened at the warehouse? Elias took a deep breath, wincing as he shifted in the chair. It was a setup, Alpha, from the beginning. The informant wasn't working for the Rogues, he was working for Castor Holdings. The room went silent. Castor Holdings? Toby asked, raising his hand like he was in class. Isn't that your company, like the family business? Yes, Roman said, his voice dropping to a terrifying chill. My uncle runs the day-to-day operations while I handle the pack enforcement. Silas, Elias confirmed. He looked at Roman with sorrow in his eyes. When Vargas had me in the basement, he wasn't just bragging, he was on the phone. I heard him talking about the payment transfer. He confirmed the wire came from a shell account linked to Silas's private ledger. Roman didn't explode, he didn't flip the table, he went perfectly, eerily still. The gold in his eyes flared, illuminating the dark circles under them. Silas, Roman whispered. He fed us to the wolves, literally. He wants the throne, Elias said. He's always believed the pack should be more aggressive. He thinks you're too soft on the humans, too focused on coexistence. So he hired the Rose to kill me, Roman surmised. And when that failed, he tried to sell you to fund his coup. It gets worse, Elias said, tapping the keyboard. Try to access the emergency funds, Roman. Roman leaned over Hallie, typing his biometric code into the console. The screen flashed. Access denied. User deceased. Assets frozen pending probate. Deceased? Hallie asked, reading the screen. Silas declared me dead, Roman growled. He likely filed the death certificate the moment the sniper fired the shot. He has frozen everything. The accounts, the properties, the safe houses. This bunker is off the grid, which is the only reason we still have power. We have no money? Toby asked, looking panicked. Like $0? Because I ordered 3 pizzas on your credit card 20 minutes ago. The card will decline, Roman said flatly. My credit score, Toby wailed. Roman ignored him. He began pacing the room, the predator caged. He has the money, he has the political clout, He has the board members in his pocket. If I walk into the boardroom now, his security, my own security, will shoot me on sight. We have to fight, Roman decided, stopping in front of the weapons locker. We take the weapons we have. We raid the compound tonight. I will tear his throat out in front of the shareholders. No, Hallie said. Roman turned. No? You can't just walk into a skyscraper and start murdering people, Roman. It's downtown Seattle. There are cameras. There are police. If you go full wolf in the lobby of a Fortune 500 company, you prove him right. You prove that you're a monster who can't coexist with humans. Then what do you suggest, Hallie? Roman snapped, the stress causing his fangs to lengthen slightly.
We are broke. We are outnumbered, and my own blood wants to mount my head on his wall.
Hallie stood up. She walked over to him, ignoring the danger radiating off him, and placed her hands on his chest. Sit, she said softly. Roman blinked. The command cut through the rage. He didn't sit, but he slumped, the tension draining out of his shoulders. Stop thinking like a wolf, Hallie said, looking up into his glowing eyes. Silas expects you to come at him with claws and teeth. He's ready for a physical fight. He has silver bullets and rogue enforcers waiting for you. So? So, Hallie smiled, and it was a sharp, dangerous smile. We don't give him a wolf fight. We give him a human one. Chapter 23. The Plan. A human fight? Roman looked skeptical. He was sitting on the edge of the desk, arms crossed. You want to sue him? Better, Hallie said, pacing the room. She was still wearing his flannel shirt, the sleeves rolled up, looking like a chaotic general. Silas is a businessman, right? He cares about the company, the stock price, the public image. He worships the stock price, Elias confirmed. He thinks wealth is the only true power. Exactly. Hallie pointed a finger at Toby. Toby, you're a hacker. I prefer the term cybersecurity enthusiast with poor boundaries. Toby corrected, licking Pop-Tart frosting off his thumb. Can you get into the Castor Holdings internal server? Not the bank accounts, the email archives, the ledgers, the dirty laundry. Toby cracked his knuckles. If their password is password 123, like every other boomer corporation, yes, give me an hour. What is the plan, Hallie? Roman asked, watching her with a mix of confusion and adoration. Silas thinks you're dead, Hallie explained. Or he hopes you are, but he can't be sure. So, we make him sure. We make him think you're desperate. She grabbed a marker and started drawing on the glass wall of the war room. Step 1. The leak. Toby leaks evidence of embezzlement to the IRS and the SEC, just enough to spook him, just enough to make the stock price wobble. He'll panic. Roman nodded. He hates audits. Step 2. The meeting. We contact him, not you, me. You? Roman growled. Absolutely not. You are not speaking to him. I have to, Hallie insisted. I call him. I tell him I'm the mate he's heard about. I tell him you're injured, dying, and that I want to cut a deal. I'll trade the ruby of the sovereign, the symbol of the Alpha, for safe passage out of the city. I will not surrender the ruby, Roman said stiffly. And I will not let you walk into a trap. It's bait, Roman. We aren't actually giving him the ruby. We're luring him out of his ivory tower to a place where we control the environment. Where? Elias asked, leaning forward. Hallie capped the marker. The shipping yards, the container maze. It's private, it's acoustic, and it's full of metal boxes that block cell signals. He'll bring guards, Roman warned. Let him, Hallie shrugged. You're the Alpha King. You took out a SWAT team in my kitchen. I think you can handle a few corporate run-a-cops. And what happens when he arrives? Toby asked. We don't kill him, Hallie said. We get a confession, on tape. Toby streams it live to the PAC's private network. You challenge him, Roman, not as a rabid wolf, but as the rightful king exposing a traitor. You take his reputation, his money, and his PAC support all at once. Roman stared at the diagram on the glass. He looked at Hallie. You are ruthless, he murmured. I deal with bad dogs every day, Roman. Hallie smoothed her flannel shirt. Silas is just a dog who needs to be put in a crate. Roman stood up. He walked over to her, grabbed her face in his hands, and kissed her hard.
We do it,
He said against her lips.
but if he looks at you,
I kill him. Deal. Chapter 24. The Bait. The drive to the shipping yards was tense. They had swapped the conspicuous tech van for a stolen sedan. Roman hotwired it with an apologetic grimace. It was midnight. The rain had stopped, leaving Seattle shrouded in a thick, cold fog. Toby was in the back seat with his laptop and tater tot. Okay, I'm in the server. I sent the anonymous tip to the SEC. Silas's phone is blowing up. He's panicking. Did he take the bait? Hallie asked, her hands twisting in her lap. He replied to your text. Toby confirmed. He agreed to the meet, Sector 4, alone. He won't be alone, Roman said from the driver's seat. He was wearing the black tactical gear from the bunker. He looked terrifying. He'll have a sniper. That's why we picked Sector 4, Hallie said. The cranes. Elias is already up there, right? Elias is in position, Roman confirmed. He's not at 100%, but he can spot a shooter. They pulled into the shipping yard. It was a maze of rusted steel giants, shipping containers stacked 5 high, creating narrow, echoing canyons. Roman killed the engine. Stay in the car, Roman ordered Toby. Lock the doors. If you see anyone who isn't us, honk the horn and drive away.
what about you guys?
Toby asked, hugging the pug.
We go fishing.
Roman said. He got out of the car. Hallie followed. The air smelled of salt and rust. Roman took her hand. His grip was bone-crushing.
You stay behind me, he instructed as they walked into the maze. Until we see him, then you step out, show the ruby, and step back.
I know the plan, Roman.
I hate this plan,
He grumbled. They reached the clearing in Sector 4. It was a dead end, surrounded on 3 sides by towering walls of containers. A single floodlight buzzed overhead, casting long, twitching shadows. They waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. He's late, Hallie whispered. He's watching, Roman murmured, testing the perimeter. Suddenly, headlights cut through the fog. A sleek black limousine rolled slowly into the clearing, flanked by 2 armored SUVs. Alone my ass, Hallie muttered. The limo stopped. The driver got out and opened the back door. Silas Castor stepped out. He looked exactly like Roman, but older, sharper, and colder. He wore a gray suit that cost more than Hallie's education. He held a cane, though he walked without a limp. Roman, Silas smiled, spreading his arms. And the little human, how quaint. 6 armed guards stepped out of the SUVs. They raised their weapons, rifles with the blue tape, silver nitrate. Uncle, Roman said, stepping in front of Hallie. You look tired. The SEC audit keeping you up? Silas's smile faltered for a second. A minor annoyance. Bureaucracy is easily bought. He looked at Hallie. His eyes were the same amber as Roman's, but devoid of any warmth.
So, this is the creature that bewitched my nephew. I expected more.
I expected you to have a chin, Hallie shouted back, but I guess we're all disappointed. Silas's eyes narrowed.
Sharp tongue. I'll cut it out later.
He turned to Roman.
You have the ruby? The girl said you were ready to surrender.
I am ready to end this, Roman said. Admit what you did, Silas. Admit you sold Elias. Admit you tried to kill your king.
My king?
Silas laughed. It was a dry, rattling sound. You are a boy playing dress-up. You run around playing hero while I build the empire that feeds this pack. I did what was necessary. I culled the weak.
Got him,
Toby whispered in Hallie's earpiece.
That's a confession. We're live streaming to the pack elders right now. It's over, Silas,
Roman said, his voice booming.
The pack hears you. You are stripped of your rank.
Silas stopped laughing. He looked at his phone, which had just buzzed. He saw the notification. He looked up. His expression shifted from arrogance to pure, unadulterated hatred.
You think a video calls off the dogs, Roman?
Silas sneered. He raised his cane. It wasn't a cane, it was a conduit. Silas slammed the cane onto the wet pavement.
Boom! A shock wave of distorted air, compressed kinetic energy, rippled out from the impact point. It wasn't magic.
It was forbidden tech, a kinetic amplifier prototype that Castor Holdings had banned decades ago. The ground shook. The containers on either side of them groaned.
"It's a trap!"
Elias yelled from the crane above.
"Roman! Above you!"
Roman looked up. A massive shipping container suspended by a crane that Silas's men had rigged was plummeting straight toward them.
"Hallie!"
Roman roared. He didn't try to catch it. He didn't try to stop it. He grabbed Hallie and threw her, literally threw her, clear of the impact zone. She hit the ground hard, rolling onto the wet asphalt.
Crash!
The container slammed down, crushing the spot where they had been standing. Dust and sparks exploded outward.
"Roman!"
Hallie screamed, scrambling to her knees. The container blocked her view. She was cut off.
"Grab her!"
Silas commanded. 2 guards were on her instantly. Hallie fought. She used the moves Roman taught her. She gouged eyes. She kicked knees. She screamed. But they were shifters. They were too strong. One of them slammed a fist into her ribs, knocking the wind out of her. Another clamped a rag over her face. Chloroform. Chemical and sweet.
"No!"
Hallie gasped, the world spinning.
"Roman!"
From behind the wall of the fallen container, a roar tore through the night. It wasn't a human shout. It was the sound of a monster breaking its chains. Metal screeched as Roman tore through the steel wall of the container with his bare claws, stepping through the wreckage like a demon rising from hell. He was half-shifted, his face elongated, claws fully extended, eyes burning with madness. He saw the guards dragging Hallie into the SUV.
"Hallie!"
He lunged, covering 20 feet in a single bound. Silas raised his cane again.
"Stop him!"
The guards fired. Not bullets, nets. Weighted nets made of silver-infused chainmail fired from cannons. They hit Roman midair, wrapping around him, burning into his flesh. He crashed to the ground, thrashing, roaring, tearing at the metal that sizzled against his skin.
"Drive!"
Silas ordered, stepping into the SUV with the unconscious Hallie. The door slammed, the tires screeched. Roman watched through the mesh of the silver net, his vision blurring with pain and rage, as the taillights faded into the fog. They had her. They had his mate. He threw his head back and howled, a sound of such desolate, violent promise that it shattered the windows of the parked cars nearby. The war had just begun, and he was going to burn the world to get her back.
Chapter 25. The Capture.
Toby watched the SUV disappear from the safety of the stolen sedan. He was hyperventilating. Tater Tot was barking ferociously at the windshield.
Oh God,
Toby whispered.
oh God, they took her.
Mom is going to kill me. He scrambled out of the car, running toward the wreckage where Roman was trapped.
"Roman!"
Toby yelled.
"Roman, hold on! I have wire cutters! Somewhere!"
Roman wasn't moving anymore. He was lying still under the heavy silver net, steam rising from his skin where the metal touched him.
"Roman?"
Toby stopped, terrified. Are you dead? Roman opened his eyes. There was no humanity left in them, no gold, just black abyssal voids.
"Get this off me,"
Roman whispered. The voice didn't sound like Roman. It sounded like the wolf itself, speaking through human vocal cords.
Elias dropped down from the crane, limping heavily. He had a knife.
Silver, Elias cursed, slicing at the connectors of the net.
"Don't touch it, Toby. It burns."
It took them 3 minutes to cut him free. 3 minutes where Roman lay perfectly still, vibrating with a rage so potent it felt like radiation. When the last chain was cut, Roman stood up. His clothes were shredded. His skin was patterned with grid-like burns that were already trying to heal, fighting the silver poisoning. He walked to the spot where Hallie had fallen. He found one of her shoes, a cheap sneaker she had worn for the heist. He picked it up. He inhaled the scent. Alpha, Elias said cautiously. We need to regroup. The elders saw the stream. Silas is disavowed, but he has Hallie. He'll use her as leverage to force your abdication. Roman turned slowly.
He crushed the sneaker in his hand.
He won't get the chance to negotiate, Roman said. He walked over to the stolen sedan. He ripped the driver's side door off its hinges and threw it aside.
"Get in," Roman ordered.
Where are we going? Toby asked, climbing into the back with Tater Tot, shaking like a leaf.
"To the police?"
Roman started the car. He revved the engine until it screamed.
"No," Roman said. We are going to the armory, and then we are going to hunt. But Silas has an army, Elias warned, climbing into the passenger seat. Silas has employees. Roman corrected, his eyes flashing black again. I have a pack. He slammed the car into gear. Toby, Roman said, looking in the rearview mirror. Call the number I gave you for the emergency broadcast. Who am I calling? Toby stammered. Everyone. Roman said,
Every wolf in the city who is loyal to the crown. Tell them the king is calling the blood hunt. What's a blood hunt? Toby asked, terrified. Roman smiled. It was a smile devoid of humor, mercy, or sanity. It means, Roman whispered, that tonight there are no laws. Chapter 26, The Alpha Unchained. The Castor Tower was a 70-story monolith of steel and glass piercing the Seattle skyline. To the humans of the city, it was the headquarters of a boring logistics conglomerate. To the pack, it was the throne. Tonight, it was a fortress. Silas had locked it down. Steel shutters covered the ground floor windows. Heavily armed private security, rogue wolves in tactical gear, patrolled the plaza. A sedan with no driver's side door screeched around the corner, engine redlining. They have barricades, Toby yelled from the back seat, clutching Tater Tot so hard the pug was wheezing. Roman, you can't ram a concrete barricade. I am not ramming it, Roman growled, his hands gripping the steering wheel until the leather cracked. I am the distraction. He didn't hit the brakes. He hit the barrier at 60 miles an hour. The impact was deafening. The sedan crumpled like an accordion. But Roman was already moving. He leaped out of the missing driver's side before the car stopped rolling, reaching across to yank the jammed passenger door open and dragging Elias out with him. Toby scrambled out the back, diving behind a planter box.
Clear the lobby!
Roman roared. He didn't wait for a response. He walked toward the glass doors. His chest was bare, crisscrossed with the angry grid-like burns from the silver net. His eyes were black voids. A guard raised a rifle. Halt! Roman didn't halt. He didn't even flinch. He just kept walking, a juggernaut of pure rage. Fire! Bullets sparked against the pavement. Roman shifted. He didn't bother with the veil. He exploded into the massive 8-foot alpha wolf mid-stride. The transformation was violent, shredding the remains of his tactical pants. He hit the glass doors like a cannonball. Glass shattered, metal twisted. Inside the lobby, chaos erupted. Roman was a blur of black fur and teeth. He wasn't fighting, he was executing. He swatted a guard into the reception desk with enough force to crack the marble. He bit through the barrel of a rifle. But there were too many of them. Silas had emptied the payroll. 50 guards swarmed the lobby, firing silver-laced rounds. Roman roared as a bullet grazed his flank. He stumbled. The silver burns on his skin were sapping his strength. Then a howl cut through the night. It came from outside. Then another. Then a dozen. Toby looked up from behind his planter box. Holy crap! Wolves were pouring into the plaza. Not rogues. Pack. There were wolves in business suits, wolves in construction vests, wolves in pajamas. They had heard the blood hunt call. They had seen the stream. They knew their king was fighting.
For the king!
A massive gray wolf howled, leaping over the barricade. The pack crashed into the lobby like a tidal wave. It was a brawl of epic proportions. Fur, teeth, and office furniture flying everywhere. Roman didn't stop to watch. He had one goal. He shifted back to human form at the elevator bank, leaving a trail of bloody footprints. He pried the steel doors open with his bare hands. The car was at the top floor. Going up? Elias asked, limping up beside him. He had a security baton he'd taken off a guard. Take the stairs, Roman rasped, wiping blood from his eyes. Secure the perimeter. No one leaves. What about you? Roman looked at the empty elevator shaft. He grabbed the cables. I'm taking the express, he growled. He began to climb. 70 stories, with silver burns, with a bullet graze, fueled by nothing but the terrifying need to get to the woman he loved. Chapter 27. The Duel. The penthouse boardroom was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning. Hallie was tied to a chair at the head of the massive mahogany table. Her head pounded from the chloroform, and her ribs ached with every breath. Silas stood by the window, looking down at the chaos in the plaza below. He held his cane, the dark artifact pulsating with that sickly purple light. Impressive, Silas mused, watching the tiny dots fighting below. He rallied the rabble. I didn't think he had the charisma. He has a heart, Hallie croaked. You wouldn't understand. Silas turned. He walked over to her, lifting her chin with the cold silver tip of his cane. And you, my dear, are the reason he will lose. He fights with emotion. I fight with calculus. Ding. The elevator doors at the far end of the room didn't open. They bulged. Then, with a screech of tearing metal, they were ripped off their tracks from the inside. Roman climbed out of the shaft. He looked like something from a nightmare. He was covered in grease, blood, and soot. His chest was heaving. The burns on his skin were glowing an angry red. Silas, Roman whispered. The name carried across the room like a curse. Nephew, Silas smiled. He looked terrible. Do you need a glass of water? Roman didn't speak. He lunged. He covered the 30 feet between them in a heartbeat, but Silas didn't move. He tapped his cane on the floor. Boom! A shockwave of purple force slammed into Roman mid-air. It swatted him aside like a fly. Roman hit the conference table, sliding across the mahogany and crashing into the chairs. Physics, Silas sneered, walking toward him. Frequency manipulation. We wolves forgot our ingenuity, trading innovation for corporate mergers, but I remembered the old blueprints. Roman scrambled up, spitting blood. He charged again. Silas flicked his wrist. The cane emitted a high-frequency lash that wrapped around Roman's throat like a solid whip, jerking him back. You can't touch me, Silas gloated. I am stronger. I am smarter. And I am... You are a traitor, Roman roared, fighting against the magical noose. He clawed at his throat, his skin sizzling. I am the future, Silas yelled. He raised the cane high, the purple light intensifying into a blade. And you are just a dead dog. Roman dropped to one knee. He was losing. The silver, the climb, the magic. It was too much. He looked at Hallie. His eyes were full of apology. Hallie struggled against the ropes. She saw the despair in his eyes. She saw Silas raising the cane for the killing blow. She thought about the first night, the alley, the training, the way Roman had hesitated when she used her voice. It works on alphas, she realized. Not just him, any alpha. She took a deep breath, filling her bruised lungs. She channeled every ounce of authority, every bit of the queen energy the mark had given her. Silas! She screamed. Silas paused, looking at her, annoyed. Quiet, girl. Hallie narrowed her eyes. She poured her will into the command. Sit! The word hit the room like a physical blow. The air vibrated. Silas froze. His wolf, the primal instinct buried deep beneath his suit and his magic, heard the command. It heard the voice of a matriarch, a queen. For one split second, his knees buckled. His arm dropped. He stumbled, fighting the biological compulsion to obey. What? Silas gasped, his eyes widening in confusion. How? That second was all Roman needed. The magical noose faltered. Roman ripped it free. He didn't shift. He didn't need to. He launched himself off the floor, a missile of vengeance. He tackled Silas. They crashed to the floor-to-ceiling window. No! Hallie screamed. But Roman didn't fall. He caught the ledge with one hand, his other hand wrapped around Silas's throat. Silas dangled over the 70-story drop, dropping his cane. It plummeted into the darkness. Help me! Silas shrieked, clawing at Roman's arm. Roman! I'm family! Roman looked down at him. His eyes were back to gold, cold, hard, and unforgiving. You are not family, Roman said, his voice flat. You are rogue. He let go. Silas screamed all the way down. Roman pulled himself back onto the ledge. He collapsed onto the broken glass, gasping for air. Hallie ripped her ropes on the jagged edge of the chair arm. She ran to him. Roman! She fell to her knees, grabbing his face. Roman, look at me! He opened his eyes. He looked at her, then at the empty window. It is done, he whispered. Chapter 28. The Aftermath. The sun was rising over Seattle. The golden light flooded the ruined boardroom, illuminating the wreckage of the Castor Empire. Roman sat against the wall, Hallie cleaning the blood off his face with a torn piece of her dress. The elevator doors pinged. Elias walked in, holding a spare suit jacket he'd scavenged from an unconscious guard. He silently handed it to Roman. Roman draped the jacket over his shoulders just as the others arrived. Then Toby, holding Tater Tot. Then the board of directors, old wolves in suits who looked terrified. Then the pack elders. They filled the room, dozens of them. They looked at the broken window. They looked at Roman, battered, bleeding, and barely covered, with the mark of the sovereign glowing faintly on his chest. Slowly, one by one, they knelt. The suits, the warriors, even the arrogant board members. They dropped to one knee, bowing their heads. "The king is dead," Elias announced, his voice echoing in the silence. He looked at Roman. "Long live the king." Roman didn't look at them. He looked at Hallie. Hallie looked around the room. She saw the reverence. She saw the power. And suddenly, she couldn't breathe. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a temporary alliance. These people, these monsters, they belonged to him. And because of the mark on her neck, they belonged to her too. She stood up, backing away. "Hallie?" Roman reached for her hand. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't do this." "Hallie, wait." "I'm a dog walker, Roman," she said, her voice rising in panic. "I paint portraits of pugs. I don't rule nations. I don't kill uncles." "We can figure it out." Roman tried to stand, but his legs failed him. He was too weak. "I need space," Hallie said, tears streaming down her face. I need to go home." She turned and ran. She ran past the bowing wolves, past Toby who tried to grab her arm, and into the stairwell. Roman watched her go. He tried to roar, to command her to stay, but he didn't. He couldn't. He slumped back against the wall, the most powerful creature in the city, and felt completely, utterly alone. Chapter 29. The Grovel. It had been 3 days. Hallie was in her apartment. The window was fixed, landlord special, duct tape and plywood. She was sitting on the floor, packing a box. She couldn't stay here. The lease was compromised. The neighbors hated her because of the SWAT raid, and every time she looked at the kitchen floor, she saw a giant wolf. Knock, knock. Hallie froze. Tater Tot, traitor that he was, ran to the door and scratched at it, tail wagging. "Go away, Toby!" Hallie yelled. "I don't want any more updates on the stock price." "It is not Toby." A deep voice rumbled through the wood. Hallie's heart stopped. She stood up, smoothing her t-shirt. She unlocked the deadbolt. Roman stood in the hallway. He looked better. He was healed. He was wearing a suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. But he looked tired. His eyes were anxious. He held a box, a donut box. "I come in peace," he said. Hallie crossed her arms. "You can't just show up here, Roman." "I tried to call," he said. "You blocked my number. And the pack line. And the secure satellite phone I had Toby put in your bag." "Because I need space." "I know." Roman stepped into the apartment. He placed the donuts on the table. "But I cannot give you space. I can give you time. I can give you money. I can give you the head of anyone who looks at you wrong, but I cannot stay away." "Roman." "I am a king," he said, pacing the small kitchen. "I have responsibilities. I have a company to rebuild, but none of it works without you." He stopped and looked at her. He dropped to his knees. Not because he was weak, but because he was choosing to. "You said you didn't want to be a queen," he said softly. "Fine, then don't be. Be Hallie. Walk dogs, paint paintings. I will handle the politics. I will handle the wars." "It doesn't work like that," Hallie whispered. "I have the mark. They bowed to me." "Let them bow." Roman shrugged. "You can ignore them, or tell them to sit. You're good at that." He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. "You said you wanted a ring," he said. He opened it. It wasn't a diamond. It was a band of black obsidian, inlaid with a vein of gold that moved like liquid. It's not from a store, he said. It's from the vault. It binds my power to yours. If you wear this, you can command the pack as easily as you command me. Hallie looked at the ring, then at him. You're an idiot, she said, tears welling up again. I am a very large, very dangerous idiot, he agreed. But I am your idiot. Good boy, bad boy, I'll be whatever you need. Hallie sighed. She walked over to him. She took the ring. Stand up, Alpha, she commanded softly. Roman stood. Give me your hand. She didn't put the ring on her finger. She put it on his pinky finger. It barely fit. I don't need a magic ring to control you, she said, tapping his chest. I have this. She pointed to her neck, to the mark. And she grabbed his lapels and pulled him down. I have this. She kissed him. It was slow, sweet, and promised a lifetime of headaches. Roman wrapped his arms around her, lifting her off the floor. Does this mean you're staying? It means, Hallie smiled against his lips, that we have to find a dog-friendly palace. Tater Tot needs a yard. Chapter 30. The Epilogue. 6 months later, the boardroom of Castor Holdings had been renovated. The window was reinforced glass. Roman sat at the head of the table. He was listening to a drone of a report about quarterly earnings from the new CFO, Elias, who hated the job but was good at it. Roman's phone buzzed on the table. The entire room went silent. The board members froze. They knew the rules. Only one person had that ringtone. Roman looked at the screen. A small smile touched his lips. He picked it up. Yes? We're out of milk, Hallie's voice came through the speaker. And Tater Tot ate your slipper, the left one. I like those slippers, Roman mourned. Also, my brother is bringing a girl over for dinner. She's a cat shifter. Be nice. I am always nice. Roman. I will not growl at the cat. Good. Pick up 2% on your way home. And don't be late. I'm making that pasta you like. Yes, ma'am. He hung up. He looked at the board members. They were staring at him with a mix of terror and confusion. Meeting adjourned, Roman said, standing up. I have to go to the grocery store. But sir, a new member stammered, the merger. The Queen requires milk, Roman said simply. He grabbed his jacket. He walked out of the office, past the bowing secretaries, past the security guards who snapped to attention. He walked out of the building he owned, into the city he ruled. He got into his car, a new SUV with a toddler seat in the back, just in case. He checked his reflection in the mirror. He looked tired. He looked stressed. But the emptiness that had haunted him for years was gone. He touched the spot on his neck where Hallie had bitten him back a few weeks ago, a clumsy, human mark that meant more to him than his crown. He smiled. Good boy, he whispered to himself. He started the car and drove home. The end.